Good morning. Yes, I am not muted. I know. I can see my little thing going up and down at well, no, the meter thing, Chess. Don't get all excited on me. Good morning. She never gets that excited. You know that? It's like a vibrato of excitement. Oh my God, that's what you really look like. Stop. Oh no, I'm just kidding. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Look, you can't blame me for that crap, okay? Because no, you have audio. I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, but can the outside hear me?
Can you outside? Can you hear her? Hello. You go like this. Go like this. Go like that. Can you hear that, guys? 1, 2. Havana Gila. Yeah, I see things going up and down, so I can see things up and going. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they can hear. Yay.
Okay.
Awesome. So you were having a hell of a time this morning, as you were saying, which by the way has nothing to do with me because I was sleeping last night.
No, I blame you entirely. It's all Steve's fault all the time. And so there's this one Twitter thread that you're in, which is related to the topic. And then there's another Twitter thread I was in that was kind of related to the topic where somebody claimed that they didn't know how to read a Venn diagram. And when people said, okay, I'll explain to you how to read a Venn diagram, they just dug their heels and was like, that's not how it works. It's like, how do you know that's not how it works if you don't know how it works to begin with?
I did read that. Yeah, I'm thinking about saying, wait a minute here. This person doesn't know how to read a Venn diagram. Numerous people were trying to explain to them how to read a Venn diagram, and then they were trying to correct the people that actually knew how to read a Venn diagram. I don't get how the internet works, especially Twitter.
I don't understand. I don't understand how you can possibly say, I don't understand this thing, and then when somebody explains it to you, how you could possibly have enough knowledge to say, no, that's wrong, if you admittedly do not know how it works.
Well, that one person was also somebody that 2 years ago didn't know any of these terms, had a debate with me, got thoroughly trashed in that debate, and thought they became an expert overnight with nothing. I mean, they literally have not in 2 years gained not even a glimmer of knowledge. Nothing.
My favorite has still got to be, he gave me a list of terms and how they're used, and I was like, what is this? It was just like a little screenshot with like links to references, I guess. And it was just like, this term means this, here's the reference. And I'm like, okay, I don't recognize this. Where is this coming? Like, where did you get this? What is this from? Can you maybe give me like a link to this so I can follow the links to see what the references are? And he says, oh, I made it up. And here he started posting the links that were correlated, and they were all just to Twitter, and some of them were to his own Twitter, and I was very, very confused.
Yeah. And what's funny is I looked at what you showed me, and I don't remember if you told me it was from Duke or not. I don't think you did. But I looked into this and I said, where is this from? What garbage is this? This is nonsensical crap. And I was waiting for you to go, oh, it's from Oxford something or other, or something. And I'd be like, no way, show me this, right? Because I was like, what is this? And then you were like, oh, Duke made it up. I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, look, I'm all for people making stuff up, man. My Venn diagram I made up with, with Landon coming up with the help of the legend. But of course, that's based on other people's stuff, right? I mean, it's not like any kind of novel thing to make a Venn diagram, right? But still, I created that.
You can justify, or you could do a list like that, but it is going to admittedly be not a published, like it's not in the field.
Yeah, unless who would recognize it if they didn't see it before?
And you're right, unless you work in that field and are justifying and explaining why you're using each of these ones and like what your justification is and like your explanation for each one of these terms, you're just basically Urban Dictionarying.
Yep.
And not even as good as Urban Dictionary, because Urban Dictionary has some resources behind it.
Well, I think that maybe after we do the initial talk that we wanted to get into and get some phone calls, we kind of maybe can show some of the Twitter stuff. But I mean, that's actually that in a nutshell. I don't know even if we want to deal with that because when you have somebody that says, look, I don't understand this, can you explain it to me? And then people do, and then they tell them that they're wrong. I'm like, okay, this is not a person who really wants to learn.
No, you're wrong. And so you start trying to give them examples to be like, no, I'm not. Here's why. And then other people start hopping in saying, no, they're not. Here's why. You're dogpiling me.
That'd be like me going to Dapper Dino and go, hey, can you explain to me these synapsids? And he explains to me, I'm like, no, you're wrong. I don't know anything about it. Hey, teach me Klingon. You're wrong.
My favorite had to be when he's like, I feel like, so he's trying to say like, hey, listen, this is how I feel. I feel like I'm being called stupid by a bunch of flat earthers. And it's like, you can't insult us and play victim at the same time.
Yeah, pick a lane, pick a card, man.
You don't get to be like, you guys are hurting my feelings as I try to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. But anyways, as you guys know, I had written another blog entry on the burden of proof again, because it seemed to keep coming up. And I just wanted to highlight a few points on it. This won't take very long, because I do want to get to some phone calls, and I want people to maybe call in and ask about the misconceptions on the burden of proof, which, by the way, I am well cited on this. And what I mean by that is that there's numerous sources I can actually recommend to somebody if they want to go look this up. This stuff is not as I pull out of my ass and go, here, this is what I think. This is what what's in the literature. Let me explain to you what's in the literature. You can agree with it, disagree with it, but that's what's in the literature. Right? I mean, so I've been reading a bunch of papers on this particular topic, and everything that I've explained in my blog seems to be congruent on these particular papers. But I think a lot of people just throw this mantra out there that, oh, the person making a positive claim has a burden of proof. And that is just, it's so simplistic. And it really kind of doesn't explain to people what people mean by their burden of proof. And it certainly doesn't always apply. And so I thought we would go over my blog real quick and get some phone calls on it. And then if you want to dive into some of the Twitter stuff afterwards.
I mean, yeah.
Your funeral. I mean, your brain cells, not mine. I just block most of those people. I don't even deal with them.
There is one thing that I want to look at that I think is it's like such a bait. It's such a bait to the person was essentially baiting people into, like, you and me and AT2 was trying to bait us into saying, so you're saying this, so they could accuse us of a straw man.
I get that often. Oh, well, Steve said this. No, Steve did not. I've been on Facebook. If somebody says, you're telling atheists what to believe, and you're telling what atheists are, blah, blah. I'm like,
well, they said this is science, not like science isn't language. And so I said, how do you communicate science then?
Language.
And I said, asking for a friend. And they said, however your friend will best be able to understand it. I'm like, okay, so let's try language. Again. By what tool would you, to communicate science, what tool would you employ to communicate that? And they said, pictographs.
Pictographs. I saw that. Pictographs. I'm like, okay, hey, whatever works. You know?
I'm like,
but that's a form of language, though.
They were, within that context, like, yeah, of course it's still a language, but in that context, I mean, you could say that the letter A is a picture. It's a picture representing a sound,
sure,
right? So pretty much all writing is pictographed, which is still language, right? But the thing that killed me was in the context of that, because they said, no. Before they said pictograph, they said communication. So I said, so you would use communication as a tool for communication? That's not how that works. When you talk, and this is where I came up with that chart I just sent you about the level of dishonesty and the level of hatred and how stupid somebody's going to be.
Yeah, I'll show that near the end. That's definitely worth showing. But yeah, no, it's funny because I mean, I asked the person who you were talking to about, and I said, look, because they asked me a question. They're like, well, how is this possible? And I said, well, let me show you. And I showed using logic how it's possible. And they said, I don't understand any of that. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I'm happy to explain it to you if you want to learn it, but don't waste my time if you're not interested in learning it. Oh, I want to learn it. And then I explained to them, and then they start strawmanning me and Jared, going, oh, well, Steve says I'm not an atheist unless I say there's no God. I'm like, neither one of us said this. Now you're just outright
Nobody said
lying.
this.
How do you go from like not understanding to actually being dishonest? That is a massive leap that I see happen all the time with people. It's like, okay, I don't understand. Then they say you're wrong, and then they lie about you. It's like a progressive thing that I see almost all the time with certain groups of people.
Godless Scummer says they saw this thread where you were talking to Sassy Heathen.
Yeah.
And so this
it's not
was
her
on
I'm
that
talking
thread,
about, by the way.
but
So
it wasn't.
Sassy.
Yeah, it wasn't her. Yeah. So they said that, and I said, and they said, yes. Have you ever heard of pictographs? So they said yes, that you use communication as a tool to communicate, which is ridiculously dumb. And then they said, yes, have you heard of pictographs? Now, within the context of this conversation, we're talking about the way science is communicated. So what they've just said in that context is, you communicate science through pictographs only. That's what they've said. Now, if I ask for clarification, saying like, you realize that this is in this context what you're saying, it's a bait because that's of course not what they're saying. Because what are you saying then? Right? It's a bait to start accusing you of strawmanning.
Right. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. Right. It's actually clear they're trying to beat you. I think trade feeling.
So I just didn't say that. I just said this is really the level we've gotten to. This is the level we're eating crayons.
Yeah.
You say when somebody says, "Hey, what means do you use to communicate?" You don't say communicate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it wasn't Sassy Heathen. I get along with her just fine. The intrigue feline says, "What is your opinion on the hydrogen, oxygen, water analogy that I use?" And that's fine. It's not hydrogen and water. It's two hydrogen and one water oxygen. Which, by the way, Kripke, if this is for a tree feline. Because everybody else is going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? Hey, but look up Kripke's rigid designators. Kripke and a few other people have argued what a rigid designator would be, that water has to be H2O as a metaphysical necessity. Okay, so it's a rigid designator that exists in all possible worlds. But so to your question, look that up, and I think you might find that interesting. How rigid designators are working like that to say, okay, water has to be this H2O as a metaphysical necessity to call it that. Or if you call it that, it's the same through all possible worlds.
I think it's a good analogy. I just think it's a little bit too complicated for the person you were talking to.
Well, I wasn't explaining to that person in the feed, but.
Oh, I know that. I'm talking to a tree. I'm also answering the question. I know she didn't he didn't ask me. I don't know what their gender is. I know they didn't ask me, but I'm answering anyway.
Yeah, and you might be right that I think Feline's answer is probably above their pay grade.
Yeah, I think that I see where you were going, but I think that the level you were talking was like way too high.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't take H and O, and it's not an and, it's a combination of obviously of molecules. But I mean, we were trying to explain simple Venn diagrams to somebody who doesn't understand what a union is. Yeah,
they said I tried even simpler analogies. I think your best bet would have just to actually make a color where it overlaps.
That confused them too. No, seriously, they're like, oh, blue, red, purple, must be purple. Like, no, you can put yellow there. It doesn't matter.
Well, it was
important.
It was absurd. I used purple because they're all are. So if you do take red and blue and put them together, you do get purple. That's why I used purple, because if you literally, but it doesn't make the red purple and it doesn't make the blue red.
They didn't understand that.
No, it was like, whew.
All right, so let's go through this. Are you looking at the outside?
Yeah, I can see the outside.
All right, so basically, the claim is this. And by the way, somebody was making this claim, and every time I see somebody make this claim, I ask them, "Where's your evidence for this claim?" And they assert it ipsy dixie. That basically, without evidence, they say, "Look, this is the way it is. You know, if you don't believe me, you're an idiot," kind of thing. I'm like, wait a minute here. I don't believe you, and I'm not even kidding. I don't believe them because it isn't always the case. But they just assert these things, thinking that it must be the case only because they've heard it so many times, right? It's one of those things that you hear often enough when you listen to these atheist cable access TV programs that you actually just you believe it, right? You never question it yourself. Like, wait a minute, is this always the case? And in my blog, I kind of show that it isn't always the case. And I think that when there are exceptions, they should be noted, because people don't understand burden of proof. They have so many misconceptions about it. A lot of people think that it has to be like, oh, well, I don't accept the burden of proof because that means I have to prove something. Well, no, that's never been like that. That'd be silly, right? Because even our most basic beliefs, we can't even justify. We certainly can't prove them. So that's not what it means to have a burden of proof. And so the word, before we get into this, the word proof has multiple different meanings. It is polysemous. It could be used for evidence in a court of law, right? You don't actually do a mathematical proof in a court of law. It's onus probandi, which is the preponderance of the evidence for somebody to prove your case, or reasonable doubt in a criminal case.
Yeah, depending on what field you're in, the word will have different connotations.
Absolutely.
Same with theory, same with faith, same with evolution. If I say evolution in a biological field, it doesn't mean the same thing as evolution if I'm talking about Pokemon in a gaming thread.
Yeah, same thing. There's a sense of a word, right, in the domain of discourse you're talking about. Spirits and alcohol means percentages of alcohol, right? What proof it is. Or if you're just talking about evidence, right? For evidentialism, people often use the word proof for evidence. But if you're in math and logic, it means an actual proof, mathematical proof.
Spirits and proof mean entirely different things depending on your context. If you're going to talk about drinks, and then if you're also going to talk about religion, or if you're going to talk about supernatural, or if you're going to talk about whatever, there's probably also a really big difference between, like, if you're talking about alcohol in science and chemistry versus if you're talking about what I had in my drink last night. Like, I really don't think if you were to say I'm going to use an alcoholic material in this combination of chemicals that I'm testing versus it doesn't mean they're going to put beer in it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
and that's why I personally, when I use the word proof, I mean a logical proof, right? I use that sense pretty exclusive. However, when somebody says, can you prove something? I take it to mean, you probably mean demonstration or evidence, right? I understand the senses of the word, but I think that if people used a better sense of these terms, there would be less confusion what they mean by to prove something, right?
I think there's an inherent problem with trying to apply day-to-day language to a field of study. It just doesn't function, especially when so much of our fields of study are as old as they are. Philosophy has been around for a very, very long time. So the word proof, like a burden of proof, doesn't mean proof the way we use the word now, but it still stands in philosophy because why change it to what was the word we had changed it to? Justification.
Justification, yeah.
When everybody in the field already knows what you're talking about, why would you change it? Because
yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't mind using burden of proof or burden of justification because I know they mean the exact same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter to me, but it is confusing to people when they say, well, why take on, like, I think experience tells people basically we don't have the burden of proof. Atheists don't have the burden of proof. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
Everybody has the burden of proof.
Yeah, there's multiple different burdens. And I will get into that in a second. Exploratory Minds Project upgraded to Curious Follow. Thank you, Exploratory Minds. I appreciate it, man. But there's multiple burdens of proof. There's discursory burdens of proof. In other words, if I want to have a discussion with you, I have a burden of proof to engage and tell you my positions and explain them and justify them and be rational. That's just in the matter of discourse. There's this epistemic burdens of proof, my reasons for why I hold a belief to myself, which I can give to somebody else, right, if I want to. But if somebody just asking me my positions, those are just my own dosastic states.
Yeah, I saw somebody asking you earlier today, and they said, well, yeah, do fairies and stuff exist? And you said, I don't believe they do. No.
I said, no, they don't exist.
They don't exist. Yeah. And so the person was like, well, prove to me they don't. Why?
I have no onus to do that whatsoever.
Why would I? Could you imagine having to do that to anybody who ever asked you a question about anything ever?
But, we've had this discussion before. Exactly the same thing. Do you remember the reason why people think that way? We've talked about it before, remember?
No. Which time was this?
Many, many times we've talked about this.
I feel like we've had this conversation so many times. Right? I can't even keep track.
Is the ones that keep putting out why they have a theist call, and then they just say, "Oh well, the theist says, oh, you believe in God. Give us your evidence." Right? That's
Oh,
what.
yeah.
That's so. All this stuff kind of just extends from that.
Yeah, because
new
they
atheism type
go down
stuff.
this they
Right.
go down this script, right? Because it's a script, and they will say, well, do you believe in fairies? No. Well, I don't believe in God for the same reason you don't believe in fairies. Why don't you believe in fairies?
Yeah, but like I said, I'm not going to sit there and
Right,
go on
so-
Twitter tell people why I believe fairies are nonsense. I'm not going to waste my time. That's not.
I did a stream the other day, and I explained exactly why I do believe in fairies.
And that's perfectly fine. But it's a different discussion, right? About why we believe. But I'm not trying to convince anybody that fairies don't exist. So I don't give a shit if I give you my reasons or not. I mean, if I'm telling somebody, hey, this is how you would justify it, then I'm going to explain to you why I believe fairies don't exist, and I'll tell you how to justify it, just like I do with Santa Claus, just like I have done for atheists to say, hey, look, if you want to argue there's no gods, this is a good way to do it, right? I've actually shown atheists how to justify a belief that there are no gods. So
it was also like a shift in the conversation. You were talking about epistemology, and then they shifted into this accusatory nonsense, and they shifted what the conversation was even about.
Yeah, because they like to be sidetracked.
Into we're discussing the logical problems and logistics of going about things in this way, and now you're asking arbitrary questions that are completely unrelated and making demands of someone that they never said or made any indication they were going to have. So it's the same as things that like Kent Hovind does. It's the same kind of thing that Cy 10 was doing. It's the same kind of thing that you see like some flat earthers do, and it's just like they have to stay on their script. If they're off their script, they don't know how to be off their script, so they switch back, try to get back onto that script, which is why you saw them go to the fairy thing. Michael, the Canadian Atheists, for 2, thank you. He did say he wanted to call in.
Yeah, I saw that, and we'll get the phone number out there as soon as I get through this, Michael.
Chris Foster for $4.99 says, Steve, happy Monday, my friend.
Happy Monday to you too, Chris, and to Cheshire, I assume too, right? Happy Monday to her. It's still Monday in Canada too. Even though they're a couple hours ahead of where she's at. But thank you, Chris. But yeah, the point being is that these people try to derail the conversation when they it's so funny because they're the one having the script. They always tell. I have on Facebook all the time people going, you know, Steve has a script. No, I don't. I just been doing this so long. I know the answers before you even think of them half the time. It's just second nature to me. And so, you know, when I ask you, you know, like, do you believe gods don't exist? And people says, well, I'm not claiming for certainty that they don't. I'm like, that wasn't the question. They seldom answer the question proposed to them, and then they say, I'm on a script.
Like, no. Yeah. And this is why you get to that point of where you have people. I just did a stream about this the other day. If you guys are interested in seeing kind of what I was saying and talking about, why people who are either atheists or theists are starting to have a problem and starting to notice online that the atheists are just as bad as the theists when it comes to logic and when it comes to trying to have honest discussions with them and like following scripts the same way that theists and apologetics do. And so it's not every single one, obviously, but when the percentage starts to tip the other way, when you become the thing you've been fighting, you know what I mean? Like you're sitting there putting your nose up and foo-fooing on people when you're doing and complaining about them doing the thing that you're doing. You don't get to do that and not get laughed at. Like, you're a joke. Come on.
All right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. They are just as bad at by the way, becoming an atheist doesn't mean all of a sudden you're a critical thinker. Hate to break it to people. Because I've seen atheists be just as bad as creationists and flat earthers. And I mean, on a daily basis. So
more than happy if some of the people from those Twitter threads came in and to actually like try and have a verbal conversation, because sometimes it's hard to have conversations on Twitter. Sometimes like these are complicated discussions and Twitter's just not designed for these kinds of conversations a lot, but it is kind of easy to suss out who's able to have the conversation, who isn't. And so, I mean, if any of them want to call in, they're more than welcome. I know there was one who said he seemed a little bit more reasonable, or she, I don't know. They seemed a little bit more reasonable. They had an alien as their avatar, like from Aliens versus Predator, like Aliens.
I don't remember.
They seemed like they were interested, but they were busy today. I do know that the Who was I talking about the other day? Who was that? My brain. I'll go find it. Just give me a second.
All right, while you do that, we'll start into this if you want. All right.
I give you permission to speak, Steve.
Thanks, Ma. So the claim is the person making the positive belief always has a burden of proof, and I rated it mixed. It's not that simple. First, there are many different types of burden of proof, and I'm just going to put it BOP. When you see BOP, it means burden of proof. And play at any given time during a discussion, even while you're quietly pondering your thoughts in solitude. So even if there's nobody else around, you have a burden of proof if you want to think about something and have a rational position on it, right? So it's not just a matter of giving it to somebody else. It's a matter of, hey, do you want your position to be rational? And you sit there. This is what people do all the time. They constantly rethink things and go, okay, is this a good position to have? Here's here's an argument that I heard. Let's reevaluate this. And we're always processing things, right? There are epistemic burdens of proof, which makes your position rational, with your position being believing something that is to be true, disbelieving it to be false, or suspending judgment on it and holding no position either way. Now, these are the standard 3 epistemic dispositions that are just normative. Either you believe something to be true, you believe it to be false, or you have no position either way. Now, clearly, there's other things you can have. You can I can hate P, I can love P, I can despise P, I can, don't care about P. I can urinate P, whatever. I mean, just pick a disposition. But for the most part, when we're talking about a rational thing, it's either believe, disbelieve, or just have no position either way, right? Obviously, you can believe logically, although it's a contradiction, you could have I believe P is true and I believe P also at the same time, but that's obviously a contradiction and irrational. So I kind of don't really include that. All right, so regardless if you believe P or don't believe P, and again, as people know, P is a proposition God does not exist, most of what we were talking about, you still always have a burden of proof to hold that position as rational. Since believing P and not P is a strict dichotomy, it is possible that since you have to be in either one of this set or the other, neither are able to be rationally held, such as the case of properly basic beliefs, which are irrational. So in other words, even though that you either believe a proposition or you don't, which is a strict dichotomy, it may be the case that it's not rational to hold either one, right? It might be I might hold a belief, even though it may not rationally be justified, right? Because probably basic beliefs are not justifiable. So just because it's not justifiable doesn't mean that you don't fall into one of those two categories. You absolutely do. Either you believe or you don't believe in classical logic. And you see the atheist experience talk about that a lot. Oh, whether you believe or you don't believe. Yeah, we know. Good so far, Chesh?
Yeah, one of the things that we run into, I think, is that people will say, well, it's this dichotomy, and it's like, yes, but there are positions within that dichotomy, right? It's just because there are two answers doesn't mean you can't there isn't nuance to those, like why or whereabouts you are in within that dichotomy, right? So that's one of the things that we ran into with one of the guys we had on, who was trying to say I'm making this more nuanced and you guys are taking nuanced out. And it's like, but you're saying there's only two positions and we're adding one. How are you more nuanced than us? Yeah, they're completely,
it's funny is they actually make it far more confusing and muddy the waters, and they think they're actually making it simplified and precise. And it's like, no, that's actually not the case. Again, I have a standing thing out there. If anybody can demonstrate to me how words like agnostic atheism can work in any kind of schema that avoids any kind of ambiguity, superfluous or nonsensical, I will take a look at it. I'd be happy to do so. I'm not claiming that they can't. I have never said no such schema exists or it can't be done. I'm just saying that I personally have never seen one, and these terms are so ambiguous that to me they convey absolutely nothing. They really don't. Somebody tells me they're agnostic atheists, I look at them and go, what is that? What do you mean by this? Because you ask 6 people, you get 6 different answers, and even then they're confused about what the hell they mean by it. Second, okay, going on. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Chess, but I had Dr. Malik, who wrote Defining Atheism and the Burden of Proof, leave a voicemail with me, and he's going to have me on his show probably this month to talk about his paper and the Burden of Proof, because he really likes my review of his blog. Got me in his paper. I did a review of it. And
he likes your garbage.
Yeah, he likes my garbage.
Good job.
Yeah. Let me read this and you get through the super chat. Second, there's a burden of proof if you're actually trying to convince someone or not, called the burden of persuasion. I've talked about that in a prior blog that I think the Treat Like Feline put in the live chat there. If you're not trying to convince someone, such as you are merely trying to relate, you're merely relating your own personal nostastic states as some self-referential or autobiographical information to someone, or someone who is normatively or generally presumed true, then you have no burden of proof to anyone else. And what I mean by that is basically, look, Steve, do you believe this? No. Well, why? I'm not going to get into the why. I'm just telling you my states. I'm not trying to convince you. I have no burden of proof, evidential-wise, to justify anything to you. I have an epistemic burden of proof to myself about why I hold there's no fairies, but I have no discursory or no epistemic obligation of any kind to tell you why I don't believe in fairies unless I'm trying to convince you otherwise, right? Or if I'm actually in a discussion, right? If we're having a debate on fairies, then yes, I have an onus to within the rules of the discourse, because that's what you do in a debate, right? It's not like it's a legal rule, though, right? If I don't tell you my reasoning, I don't get punished for it. It's not how you argue in a debate. That's all. So you have an obligation when you go into debate to argue, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's there. Not every. This is another problem we run into. Not every discussion is a debate.
Yeah, they think so, and I see it all the time on Twitter. Like, you've already lost the debate here, and I'm like, I'm not debating you. I'm explaining. When I'm explaining something to you on Twitter, it's not a debate, and I only have debates formally. I don't have informal debates. Do you want to get the super chats now?
I just don't even bother. The person I was talking about was Philip, by the way. Over here, I'll put the link in the chat. I was looking at what he had posited as an observation, and then just kind of looked at like the shitstorm that followed him daring to say that he had a bad experience dealing with online atheists. And it's just like, oh gee, I wonder why. How dare you? Helios' super chat for 10 says PA in medical inns equals verify that a surgery is medically necessary, and it doesn't change coverage of a claim. PA in RX inns makes a normally excluded RX covered. Words in related areas mean different things. Correct.
So PA in medical insurance means one thing, but when it comes to like prescriptions, it means something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jamie Russell for 325 says 12 quarters plus 1.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, and people need to understand that words do have usages. And here's the thing. I've been the one arguing for 4, 5, 6 years now that words have polysemous usages. And it's not me that's the prescriptivist. It's the people going, hey, you have to use a word this way or you're just straw manning. No, it's not.
Or
stop it.
Else.
Yeah. So...
Yeah,
we'll get to questions after I get through my blog if you guys want to hold on.
There are people, one of the ones that gets cited a lot is Flu's paper saying like, look at where do philosophers use this, because we're talking about philosophy, and they cite Flu's paper. That is a paper written about suggesting using it this way, which was handedly rejected.
Yeah, and he even admitted in there, hey, it's atheism is the belief that God does not exist, but I wanted to argue to use it this way. That was his whole point of his paper. And
that was the point of the
let's
argument.
Not do that. It was rejected by philosophy almost ubiquitously. The only people that took on it was Smith, Martin, and Bullivant, and he's a theist. That's it. Those three people.
And the thing is that even in that case, he could be rejected by philosophy and still have good reasons for using it in whatever way. That's fine. It just means that the field isn't going to take on that terminology, and that's also fine. You could also write a paper that supports Flu, or make your own argumentation supporting Flu as to why philosophy should change. But you could also write a blog or a paper dealing with the logical problems like Steve's WASP argument in response to why you might personally use it. But we can't even get to that part of the conversation. We can't even get that far. It's absurd.
Yeah, it's funny because Flu actually became a deist later on in his life, so I don't think he really thought his argument was that great. And then in 2017, a doctor named Dr. Burgess Jackson, who I think is a theist, wrote a great great paper against Flu's work explaining the problems with it.
As to why,
and get, it's so funny because he uses the same notation that I use. And
it's like,
okay.
It's not like it was rejected by fiat.
No,
right?
no, people are like, okay, if we do this, then what happens? Oh, there's some problems with this.
It makes sense to me that theists would encourage this use of the term. Like, that makes sense to me because it makes it really easy to just pick it apart. So, yeah, sure. You want to do the dumb? Okay, you do the dumb.
Yeah, no, I think so too. But at the same time, the atheists go look at these new atheists from like the atheist experience groups and go, we're not even going to bother to have an actual dialogue with these people. Because,
it makes it very easy to dismiss.
Yeah, very easy to dismiss. And I don't blame them. Look, I do it all the time. I'm not going to talk to people that are so at such a below level, like the Duke again, where, it says, hey, I don't understand how a Venn diagram works. People explain to him, then he goes, you're wrong. Why am I going to waste my time spinning my wheels to explain to him anything? It makes no sense to me. All right, so also on the second one here, some things are just so presumed true that I have no, even a discursory burden of proof. If I tell you that A equals A, why do I have a discursory obligation to explain that to you? Right? That's an axiom of logic, right? I mean, it's just fundamentally true. If you don't accept a fundamental truth, what am I going to do? First of all, I'm not going to try to persuade you to it, but I don't take on a burden by saying things like that. Now, different epistemologists might argue differently on that. I take the approach that some other epistemologists that I've read take, that, and this was who was this, Carlyle, I think it was, argue that, some things are so normative that just by merely uttering them, there's really no esoteric force behind them. It's just a matter of statement of a fact that has been well accepted. You could
probably argue both ways, but I also think that it depends on the context of the conversation.
I agree.
And so if somebody's trying to use that to detract from the point,
yes,
or to try and get back on their script so they can just preach about whatever it is they want about their lacktheism, then no, you wouldn't have any burden to make a justification of a claim that they're demanding you make a justification for,
yes, because
that's not what the conversation is. If the conversation is about justification or about the burden of proof about whatever you're talking about, so if they're positing God, like I don't think the ACA is necessarily wrong to say, hey, listen, why don't you believe in dragons then? Mm-hmm. But then they need to take that on and say, okay, well, why don't you believe in God? Right, so if they can't explain that, then
but they're not there to give their own positions, right? They're there in their show just to attack people that call in. We're different. We like to have a dialogue.
Fine, but if you take that position everywhere you go with every single person about every single thing, well, why do you believe you won't get hit by a car when you cross the street? Why do you ever cross the street then? Like, it gets to the point of just it's absurd. So unless the conversation is about that, then bringing it up is a red herring, right, for the most part, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so
if
the context of the conversation doesn't necessitate or isn't about you making that justification, then I would not say that you saying that no, I don't, or no, those things don't exist, has any weight or need to be justified.
Well, that's why these are generalities, right? Again, it goes to the esoteric force. If I state something, there's an assertion being made. If it's some kind of declarative type statement, if I say, look, fairies don't exist, that is a declarative statement. That is making a claim. There is usually a burden of proof. That has a burden of proof if I'm trying to persuade you. It has an epistemic burden of proof just by me believing it. It has a discursory burden of proof if I'm trying to engage a conversation with you about it. But if I say A equals A, all the papers I've read so far on that kind of factual thing, they don't think there's any esoteric force behind it to convince anybody. And I tend to think that. Now, again, who knows? Each person might have their own position on that. I'm not saying there's one size fits all on that. All right. So, for example, I tell you that I believe fairies do not exist. By believing that, I am supporting the position or claim that ontologically no such beings as fairies exist. By expressing my belief pro tanto, which just means as the extent of just as the belief, as to only be just that, an expression of my dosastic states, I have an epistemic burden of proof to myself if I want that position to be rational. However, I have no burden of proof to someone else to demonstrate, prove, or even give evidence as to why I believe the fairies don't exist. that would be in a statement of, if you ask me, hey, Steve, do you believe in fairies? I say, no, I believe fairies don't exist. But I'm not having a conversation with you where I'm trying to convince you that there are no fairies. I'm just relating you my dosastic state. That's it. There's a distinction to be made there. Now, again, does it have assoteric force or not merely by the utterance? That gets into speech act theory. And I don't think that me having assoteric force behind it gives me any burden of proof to explain to you why, but it does give you it does have an assoteric force that I have to demonstrate to myself why I'm rational to believe that there's no fairies.
I think that you might want to just maybe consider this. Consider the following. It might be valuable for you to just start these conversations, like when somebody comes a little bit weird, when they get like 1 or 2 tweets in and then just say, have you read my blog, ? And link the blog, and then just be like, and then when they inevitably say no, I don't care about what you have to say. Yeah. You go, then why are you talking to me?
Yeah, that's why I've done something like that before. I'm like, okay, then why do we have this conversation?
Copy.
I love when somebody worse when they ask me questions and they say, why should I care what you think? Then why'd you ask me questions?
Then why'd you ask? Well, on the same hand, you just say, then like what, instead of like, why did you ask, or then why are you talking to me? Then you say, then why are you trying to hijack my tweet to preach to people? Because I guarantee you that the new atheist TM, because new atheism plus TM, because they're so like hair trigger, will get so pissed off about the word preach. They will go off. They have no self-control.
It is almost like preaching.
It is preaching. It is straight. You are when you actively go into threads that are not about those things to declare what you think and then demand other people do things that will prove your point and stay on your script. You are preaching. You are not having a conversation.
Yeah,
same thing. It's the same thing as Ken Hogan.
I had posted on Facebook that, like, about certain things, and I'll have people just go, Steve's wrong. He's a troll. And then I'll have like Joe and Dave and other people come on and go, and even moderators I know, they're like, well, why is Steve wrong? You're just saying he's wrong, but will you explain why he's wrong? Oh, it's just so stupid. I don't need to explain. Well, no, if you say that I'm wrong, you do have an onus to explain it, or I just dismiss you, right? I mean, Hitchens razor. It's not a great it's not a great thing, but it sometimes applies like this.
Yeah.
You tell me I'm wrong? Okay, show me. Oh, you did it? Okay, I don't care what you have to say then.
Steve's wrong by fiat because Matt Dillahunty told me so.
That's actually the Matt Dillahunty fallacy, yes. Argumentum ad Dillahunty.
Yeah, it just means that because it's this person, they're wrong. Or Steve specifically.
Well, that's what the McRae fallacy, the McRae virus was.
Hey, Otangelo, you're not answering my question, so you're in timeout until you do.
Oh, he's got a question on the table from last time, doesn't he?
Yep. He's still got that on the table, so he's in timeout, and so he can wait 300 seconds, and then he can answer my question, and then if he doesn't, he can go into timeout for another 300 seconds and think about what he's done.
I thought he tried to answer your question. It was about Dapper Dino. I remember that, but I thought he tried to.
Yes, he did not answer the question.
All right. So to be fair, because I don't want to seem unfair, ask the question again specifically so he knows what to answer. I did.
I put it in again. I'll put it in again if you'd like.
Yeah, please. So keep him updated.
I'll repost it.
Okay. So my relating of my beliefs states do not entail a burden of persuasion to convince you that fairies do not exist. And I think that's the critical takeaway. Because the thing of this was, again, positive claims don't always carry a burden of proof. I am positively claiming that fairies don't exist, but if I have no desire to persuade you or have a discussion with you, I have no onus to demonstrate to you anything, and I have no onus to explain to you why I believe there are no fairies. Do I still have a burden of proof to have an epistemic justification? Yes. And this is critical because this happened in a Facebook group. The reason why I post these things in Facebook group, because those are my sandboxes to help kind of anneal my arguments and shore them up. And I actually had this happen. People are like, oh, well, Steve, you have burden of proof, by saying fairies don't exist. Yes, I do. What is it? I'm not going to give it to you, and I don't care if you believe me or not. You can believe fairies exist. I'm not trying to persuade you. Oh, then you blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not understanding what I'm telling you here. I have no onus to persuade you. You can believe fairies exist if you want to. I'm just telling you that I don't, and I'm giving my dosastic state that I don't. I mean, I believe that they don't. they don't understand that doesn't have a burden of proof for me to sit there and convince you that there are no fairies. So else I'd be busy with every conversation going down rabbit holes every time somebody asks me.
You could also have the discussion instead of like what we were talking about. Because you were saying that like you may or may not accept this version of logic, right? Yeah. And so you could have a discussion to say like, hey, listen, I don't accept your WASP argument because I'm not using this version of logic. And you can have that conversation about which one it applies where and why and which would be better than. But then that's another conversation that we're not able to get to.
All right, so Tangela will try to come back on a sock to avoid the timeout. That we don't do that here, so you get another timeout.
If he's on a sock, just hide the sock, so that way he doesn't. Listen, if you're going to come in, you need to come in on your actual account. You get 300 seconds to answer directly and honestly.
Yeah, he has time to. So no, you can hide his sock account. He can use the other one. I only keep him. So he has one account. So
that's how it works.
Intrigue Feline, can you hide Tangelo on this account? Because you just unhidden him. If not, I could do it. All right, so I mean, are we everybody good so far about why I made the thing why you can make a positive claim and not have a burden of proof to somebody else? All right. So, for example, I tell you that fairies do. Wait, did I just read that one? Yeah. Similarly. If you refuse to believe fairies exist, it isn't dependent upon my beliefs whatsoever. I've noticed that too. People say, well, you haven't convinced me, therefore I don't believe you. You're not believing me has nothing to do with whether I convinced you or not. If I tell you that the sky is blue and I don't give you evidence for it, does that mean all of a sudden you shouldn't believe that the sky is blue? No, you have your own reasons why the sky is not blue. So if you refuse to believe that fairies exist, it isn't dependent upon my beliefs whatsoever, but based upon your own evidential or epistemic reasoning for why you merely do not believe fairies exist, agnostic on P, or you in fact believe as I do that fairies don't exist. If I told you that A equals A is true, would you not believe me merely because I didn't present any evidence for why I believe A equals A is true? And I think that's important because, again, it goes to the whole God claim. People just sit there and say, I don't believe you, I don't believe you, I don't believe you. The reason I don't believe God exists is because I don't believe you. Who gives a shit? There doesn't have to be a single person to argue for God or not, whether you believe or not, right? For you to have a position on it and go, well, I believe gods exist or I believe that they don't. Nobody has to argue those things to you. Your reasons for why you hold a position shouldn't be that contingent upon anybody else convincing you or not. Do your own damn homework. Do your own damn research. Have your own damn arguments. Have your own positions. Me believing whether fairies exist or not should have no effect on you believing if fairies exist or not. Why would it? Well,
I can explain my justification for why I believe fairies exist because it's not as it's more nuanced than a lot of other things, right? So like you can't if you say like, do you believe in fairies? Yes or no, and I say yes, and then they immediately jump to the assumption about what they meant by fairy.
Yeah, well, again, the next question. I mean, I would assume you're talking about some other sense of the word.
I play D&D. Yeah. People play fairy characters.
Yeah, but that's
in this world. These fairies are real, but in storytelling, they're real. In lore, they're real. These are you can read a book and it will have fairies in it. That is a tangible thing. Now, it's still not the same as saying that. Oh no, I believe that a fairy is going to fly through my window and come and talk to me, or the tooth fairy actually takes my teeth.
Yeah, well, they don't have ontological existence. I think the problem is you're saying the concept exists, which we all agree the concept exists.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, the concept
when we say
God
fairies
exists.
exist, we're not talking about the concept of fairies. We're talking about ontologically the being exists.
Right. So this was like an example I was using as it doesn't have to be as the answer is if you're not clear by saying I just don't believe in this and therefore blah blah. You're not being clear in what you're saying. And so I can be just as unclear in this manner.
Yeah, you do. Right? You do believe that ontologically there's no such beings as fairies, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Sure about that? What's your evidence? No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. All right.
I think happy thoughts and I don't fly. Actually, to be fair, anybody who says Tinkerbell is a fairy is fucking wrong because Tinkerbell is a pixie.
She's a pixie.
It requires pixie dust.
Yeah.
Disney's trying to retcon that into making her a fairy.
No, in Disney, too. Yeah, because it's pixie dust. I remember something like that.
Yeah, Disney's Tinkerbell is a pixie, not a fairy. Anything else is propaganda.
There you go. Retconning sucks. By the way, look who decided to show up. We have a wild Jim Majors in the house.
Jim.
All right,
I mean, wasn't there a time when people who were gay were called fairies?
Yeah, again, different sense of the word, right? But again, when I make a positive statement and I say A equals A, which is a positive statement, it's a positive claim. If A equals A is true. If somebody says, "Well, I don't believe you because you didn't give any evidence for it," therefore, hits and razors kind of stuff, that's irrational, right? Because they're saying, "Wait a minute, I don't believe A equals A because you didn't give me reasons." Well, why me not giving you reasons for A equal A that you have to say that is not the case, right? Stop basing your positions on other people. That's the entire thing behind New Atheism TM and the atheist experience. Merely to sit there and go, "I don't believe you," therefore,
Right, but what it means is that words are polysemous. So if somebody is demanding that this word means this thing, and somebody says, "Well, maybe I do believe in fairies in this context," well, the word fairy is being used in this way, this way, this way, or this way,
yes.
Right? So you can believe that it exists or not in that way, but it's an example, not a law to live by. At the same time, you run into stuff like, well, if you say, "Hey, I believe this," and somebody says, "I don't believe you," what they're actually saying, if you actually pay very close attention, is they don't believe that you believe. If you answer it that way. Now, is that what they mean? No, but if you want to be a pedantic shithead the same way they're being pedantic shitheads, you can.
Yeah, I get that. And again, when people say that I don't believe me, I look at them and go, okay. And my job is, not sit there and convince anybody that I'm right, especially when it's simple logic. My arguments like WASP. Sure, I can defend my WASP argument, but let's be realistic here. I've defended that argument for well over a year now. Even though it's only been formally typed up sometime about a year ago, but I've had it for a little bit longer than that. I'm not going to sit there and defend it every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along. At some point, the onus is upon them to go, okay, this is wrong. Let me show you. Because everybody who's read we know philosophers that have read WASP. I mean, we had numerous ones of them and said, yeah, we have no problem with this. Most of us have been arguing this for a long time. Only thing I did in novel is I formulated it in a more formal structure, right. And I added the special pleading to it. But I mean, this is all arguments are derivative in some ways. So, well,
it's a matter of there's a different rejection is not refutation. So if you just say Steve's WASP argument is wrong, and you don't provide any reasoning as to why, then nobody needs to address you because you haven't actually brought anything to the table. All you've said is nuh-uh.
Yeah,
okay.
It's called argument to the stone. It's just basically, they're arguing that it's absurd, but not, or wrong, or gibberish, but they're not explaining why, right? I mean,
so if I look at a flat earther's paper, if I look at Anthony Riley's thesis, and I say this is gibberish and it's wrong, I can go
Anthony
through
Riley
it.
is gibberish.
Exactly. I can go through it and explain why. So saying something is gibberish or incorrect on its own is fine. But if that person then says, why is it wrong? You can say, here's why.
Yeah, and it's a little disappointing with argumentium ad gibberish.
So read the WASP. It goes nowhere and has no argument. It doesn't follow. How so? Explain why that is the case.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that there's already something called argumentium ad gibberish, but what that is actually is somebody actually using nonsense technical stuff to baffle people when they have no actual argument. Like my roommate, Price, wrote a paper on anti-gravity, and it was gibberish. It was argument gibberish because nobody understood it because it was nonsense. But to me, argument gibberish should be more, hey, you're just saying something is gibberish because you don't understand it. Because I get that a lot on my Facebook. Oh, this is, I don't need to refute this because it's gibberish. No, actually, it's not. It actually, to somebody who actually understands the topic, it makes sense. You
don't have to refute it if you don't know what it's talking about.
Yeah.
So either ask questions so that you do understand, or if there is something you don't understand, hey, this looks like gibberish to me. Can you explain this part or this part? That's a conversation. That's now I can explain it to you. That's that level of charity to not assume that someone is purposefully trying to confuse you. Now, there are people who have a history of doing that, and they have other examples you can point to of them doing stuff like that. So you can be like, okay, well, they seem to do this a lot. And when they have been asked in the past, they don't have any answer, or they just call you a troll, or blah, 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 blah. Now you have a reason you can justify and you can explain why you think what they're saying is gibberish. But if you just say, hey, this is nonsense and this argument goes nowhere, it's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got a conclusion.
That's an argument.
So it did go somewhere. So you need to explain, why does it not go anywhere? How is it gibberish, and in what way? Right? Explain.
And Tree Failing asked me, I will get to questions after, but I'll answer this one. Just for clarity, can you confirm you're a local atheist when it pertains to the Christian Abrahamic God, but remain globally agnostic? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at least most versions of the Christian Abrahamic God don't make sense to me. Right, I definitely think Trinity makes absolutely no sense. I mean, Trinity is just mind-bogglingly nonsense. I believe there's no hell. I believe that has been argumentum ad bacillum. And so I'd say that probably most versions of the Abrahamic God, I would say, don't exist. So I'd be a local atheist to that, probably.
And shocker, they can't answer.
But is there some version of the Abrahamic God that it might be the metaphysical explanation for things? Then I might be agnostic to that. So it's a little bit fine line, but it really depends on how they define it, right? Because obviously the logical problem of evil will shut down any kind of omni-type God with evil. So yes, I'd probably say that I am more a local atheist toward that particular God, but again, depends on the version, and some versions might be more agnostic. So that's what the problem with getting into local atheism, right? Because then you're talking about specifics. But as you know, I'm not a global atheist. So yeah. Does that make sense? Hopefully, all right.
So it makes sense to me.
Well, you're smart though.
I mean, with my low 62, it's impressive that I can understand it, but there's still like,
I know, I usually have to speak slow for her.
One poor soul in the chat is not getting it.
I'll get to that. I'm not really reading too much of the chat. I just happen to see what she wrote.
Oh, I'm watching. I'm keeping an eye out. I love chat. Chat is my bae. Chat is my waifu. So
chat is life.
I absolutely love chat so much. I don't think I would do shows like this if chat did not exist.
Fun fact, when we did Non Sequitur, Kyle didn't want the chat. I had to actually convince him we have to have chat. And he's like, no, I don't want chat. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, you don't know. He was not good at this stuff.
Kyle was wrong. Surprise.
Yeah, no, Kyle was wrong about a lot of things. I mean, he didn't want to do YouTube. He didn't want to do chat.
I don't understand why you would have a show like this and not have. If you have a show about discussions and opinions, why would you not? Horrible. And especially if you're bringing guests on, why would you not want the chat to be able to ask questions and discuss at that time, so that way you know if you've gone off the rails and you've lost them? Like
he was good at graphics. This is why we paired well. He was good at graphics, but when it came to understanding YouTube, he sucked ass. And it wasn't until he started utilizing my ideas that we started getting big. And then, of course, it was like, who's Steve? But anyways, thirdly, and this is the conclusion here, there are times where things are so normative that no burden of proof attaches merely by making the claim. If I say my name is Steve, I have no onus to convince you that my name is Steve. Matter of fact, like, for example, if I call you on the phone, Chesh, and you're just some random number comes up or something, and you're like, hi, this is Chesh. You're making a positive statement, right? You're saying my name is Chesh, but you don't have an onus to me to demonstrate or to have any evidence that your name is Cheshire, right?
Let me whip out all my paperwork and my IDs.
These are discursory type things, right?
Change my name to Chesh, like a loser.
When people say, well, if you make a positive claim, you have a burden of proof always. No, she's making a positive claim that her name is Cheshire when I call her on the phone and says, this is Cheshire. That is making a assertive statement. But she has no burden of proof whatsoever to demonstrate to me or persuade me that her name is Cheshire. This is what I'm saying. People have to understand the nuances of these types of things.
Yeah.
It's if I say A equals A, the fact of mathematics, I have no burden of proof to convince you that A equals A, no onus to demonstrate A equals A, no onus to prove A equals A, no onus to even provide any evidence that A equals A. If you do not believe A equals A or believe it's false, then you would have your own epistemic reasoning to why you hold it false, and your own burden of proof if you wanted to convince anybody that A does not equal A. But good luck with that, because merely that accepting A equals A, I think you're already in a state of irrationality. If you think that it's false, then you definitely are in a state of irrationality. So
yeah,
I wanted to get through that pretty quick because it was kind of
it's the way
wasn't
I like
one
to
of my best
explain it is
blogs, but I just wanted it out there.
there's a balancing of equations in logic. So it's the same way you balance an equation in algebra, mathematics, or chemistry. So if you want to know this has to exchange for this so they balance out, it's the same thing. If you have this position and that position and they need to balance out, anything other than it balancing, if you put a 2 here and it's supposed to be 1, then you haven't balanced the equation.
Yeah.
2 equals 1 doesn't work.
And that's what makes it objective too. Like, you know, a tree line says she can prove 0.99 repeating equals 1. When I make the claim that 0.99 repeating equals 1, I'm not making I have no burden of proof to prove it. I have a burden of proof to say I can prove 0.99 equals 1. Then I have an onus to do so, right? At least in a discursory type sense. It's not a legal obligation. Yeah, but if I tell you I can prove it and you go, okay, prove it to me, and I don't, then you can't dismiss what I say, of course. Sure. But I can't, by the way, I can't prove those things actually in maths.
Well, like we had in the chat. Hey, Steve's blog is this, and this. Okay, how so? Well, you know how so. Like I saw somebody say that the other day. Somebody said, hey, this is they said, hey, this is you've proven this thing by posting your thing that proves exactly the opposite. And the person said, how so? And they said, oh, well, you know how so, and so you're just blah 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 blah. And it's like, wait, you don't just no. That's not how this works.
None of this works that way.
I tweeted that out and said, do I really need to explain this absolute stupidity? And like a lot of people said no. And then there's a handful of people that said, yes, of course you do. And I'm like, why? I can send you the tweet if you want so you can see it.
I'll check it out. But yeah, no, I see that stuff happen all the time, right? They just have this weird idea about these burden of proofs being a one-sided thing. You make a claim, that's it. No, there's, like I said, there's just so many burden of proofs going on at one time. You have your reasoning, they have their reasoning, and if you withhold, there's what's his name, Dr. I don't remember his last name off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but you know, even something he even wrote was, look, even if you have unbelief, even if you don't believe somebody, you have a burden of proof. This is not my words. This is a PhD in the topic, who's an atheist, by the way, if I'm not mistaken. No, I think maybe they are atheists, but it doesn't really matter. It's still epistemology. Are
even symbols, because Pio makes a good point. We use the equal sign in programming language. It does not mean equal. Yeah, so if you are doing mathematics and you put a 4 and an exclamation mark, you're not saying 4 is a loud number. You're not saying the number 4 loudly. You're saying factorial. So even an exclamation mark doesn't mean the same thing depending on what language you're speaking.
Yeah, Pio Chanel 2 makes a good point. The equal sign is not equality. What the equal sign means is equivalency. And if you really want to get down to the axiomatic roots of the equal sign, it means equivalent sets. Okay, so that's what when you're dealing with equivalency of equivalent sets, because maths is built upon axioms, that's what the equal sign means. And then if you start getting into how you build the rationals and how you build up a set of the rationals and you do the equivalent sense of fractions, that's how you actually do it in a more of a real analysis approach. So yeah, that equal sign doesn't mean that this is exactly like this in all properties, right? I mean, think about this. If I have A equals B, I'm not saying the symbol A looks like the symbol B. The symbol of A has different properties than the symbol B. What I'm saying is the value of A is equivalent to the value of B. Right? I mean, so you have to understand how these symbolism works.
I told Steve he needed to make a legend, and he did. He did eventually, kind of. I don't think it's complete, but
no, it's probably not complete. But I mean, one of these days I just need to get like a not just a legend, but like a glossary. And we had one for the wiki a long time ago. We had a great glossary.
Yeah, glossaries are good.
But maybe one of these days I'll sit down and I'll just, this is how, the terms are kind of used in philosophy in a way that makes a little more sense. Because when I read these things in like Oxford Encyclopedia and those kind of things, then I don't think they're written exceptionally well sometimes. But anyways, we got a caller. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Or maybe not.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Hello.
Who we got?
Who dis?
My name is Jime.
Jime?
Hello, Jime. How are you?
Jime. It's Jim. Hard I.
Yeah, with you're
long
funny.
eye.
You got the funny mustache, right? That thinks it's like the 70s, the porn stash.
No, this is Kyle's lawyer.
Oh,
Just- Just
Kyle's
because
lawyer.
it tickles doesn't mean it's funny.
a little bit, but that's only when you get up underneath and you do your thing. Oh, I'm sorry. But anyways, how are you, buddy?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing okay, man. We're hanging in
We
there.
haven't heard from you for a while. I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, you
for
kind of been
calling.
distant, man, doing your own thing.
He's been busy, man. I've been following his Twitter.
Man, just been so busy with my dissertation and trying to get revisions in before the end of the semester in time to defend it.
Is that for your master's?
No, for my PhD.
For your PhD? In
Oh,
theology?
his PhD's gonna be done. Oh, can we do a reading of your
In theology?
paper when you're done?
What is it in? Theological studies?
All almost 400 pages of it. I don't know if you wanted to do that.
Wait. Is it in religious studies?
Yeah, it's in Hebrew Bible, Old Testament studies.
Old Testament studies.
I'm so excited for you.
That is awesome, man.
I'm excited too. I'm ready to get the.
See, I
the
always
big
knew you
D.
were a smart dude. I learned that
He's
years
gonna
ago.
He's gonna be Jim the Mustache Major's PhD. Oh,
By the way,
my feet.
I hate to do this to Jim, but Jim used to be a new atheist, trademark, black theist kind of person. And then he was like, oh, shit, there are some problems here. And he was like, oh, I don't want to be like that. And
Steve, how can you expose him like this, you monster?
Yeah, I was,
That's good,
I was a rock atheist,
He was a rock
at one
atheist.
point. But but as far as like the distinction between with atheism just being a lack of belief, I was never on that train. I was just on the train that I preferred to use it. Because it was more
That's fair
colloquially accepted, but then I realized that there was more explanatory value, more scope to using more clarifying terms.
I think you're exactly right.
What's the word I'm looking for? Utility.
Yeah.
Like discussing whether or not
Well,
the
especially
utility of
'cause
something is viable.
Jim
Right.
is somebody who wants religion out of schools. He's a secular person just like me. He's anti-creationist just like me. I would say he probably even dives into anti-theism as an axiological approach, right? To say that theology or theism probably adds less value to society than having a non-theistic approach. And that's fine. Those are great arguments to have as far as axiology. And so for him, it would make more utility to say, look, there are no gods. Listen to me. Gods are bullshit. Let me explain to you why there are no gods. Why would he want people to go, I just don't believe you? That doesn't help anybody change the discourse. That doesn't convince
That's
anybody
where
of
we
anything.
sort of kind of the conversation started moving to with Dave, but it got pulled. He just kept pulling it back to defending a position that nobody was fighting him on.
Yeah.
But I brought to the table, I was like, well, I have, because he asked me, so I said, these are my reasons for not using this. Because he's like, well, isn't there a utility? And I said, sure, but here's my counter to what the utility is, and he didn't even answer.
Golden Unicorn for $1.50. Got a little sticker. Thank you, Manya. By the way, love your avatar, Manya. Love your avatar.
I'm okay with saying that no gods exist, or the proposition that at least one God exists is false. I have no problem with that, and I think that more people hold that position than most people think. I think it's just that people think that it's difficult to it's either too difficult to articulate a defense for the positive claim, or that it is or that it will automatically put them into a position where they have the burden of proof. But it's not like that. You can take a positive stance against the claim of theism when that claim is made against you, and not have the burden of proof.
Okay, so Okay, so I the first half.
How so?
Yeah,
I'm
first half I was
curious.
with you. The second half I'm maybe divergent, but can you run it by me again?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how you would not have the.
So in other words, basically what I'm saying, if somebody tells me, I believe that a God exists, I can confidently rebut and say, I do not believe that a God exists. But the burden is still on them to prove their or to the burden of proof is still on them.
Well, no, you still have a burden of proof. If you say you don't believe them, your burden of proof is explain to them
I mean,
why you don't believe them.
I still have one. Yeah. I still have one. But it's still on them to.
But if you're trying to convince them, look, if you're, let's say you call a theist show, they can do the same exact thing. They can say, hey, look, we're theist. You're saying there's no God. Then and I know you have the skill set to do it. You'll be explaining to them, sure, there is no God. Let me explain to you why. That's my burden of proof. Let me give it to you. You have no problem. You've never had an issue with that.
What Jim is describing is the flow of conversation. That's what
I get. I totally understand that. And that's why the atheist experience, they don't really bother with their burden of proof and justification. I don't have an issue with that. Look, I'm not going to sit there and waste my time with people explaining to them why I think there's fairies are bullshit, right? So I'm not going to hold anybody to the same standard about gods. I don't personally really care about their justifications. What I care about is just what they believe. And I do care a little bit about why, but I'm more caring about a consistent system. This is something I think Jess and I we're really kind of unique there, because her and I both seem to have a thing for, we don't care what you believe or why, just be coherent and consistent about it. That's what we want. I don't know why other people don't think that way. I think it's weird.
And that's the problem with using atheism in the colloquial sense, is that it's fine as long as the conversation doesn't it doesn't evolve any further past that. But once the conversation evolves, then you have to start clarifying. So it's in most contexts, especially if the conversation is about atheism and you can foresee it developing further, it would behoove you to begin using these very very clearly defined terms.
Well, then you don't have to backtrack. You don't have to retake anything back to try and It definitely is in your best interest, and as well as to be additionally educated if you can be. Now, not everybody can be. Not everybody has the time to do that, and I can appreciate it. That's one of the reasons why you have shows and why you have these kinds of conversations, to assist people in either learning those things kind of a little bit more in a passive manner, or so that way they can send people like, listen, I'm not very good at articulating this. Here is a thing that articulates it well for me, right?
But not everybody can do that. For example, there are some people who are agnostic atheists. They just can't.
Which I'm like, I don't know what that means.
One of the best, I think, arguments. One of the best ways I find personally to argue with somebody that is making some kind of statement or declarative that that makes no sense to me is for me to ask questions so I can understand what they're saying. And once I can understand what they're saying, I can have a discussion. But if you're not able to explain to me what you're saying, how do you know what you're saying anymore?
Exactly. And when they ask them a question, they answer something other. I notice this with new atheists all the time. I ask them a very specific question, and I get a completely irrelevant answer that has nothing to do with the question I posited. If I say, do you believe there is no God? And you say, well, I think that gods are possible, but I'm not certain. I don't know what the hell your position is. I don't know what you believe on that. You're not telling me your position on. I didn't ask if you're possible. I didn't ask if you're certain. Those are different answers. They're different questions.
Well, and it compounds the difficulties exponentially whenever the term that you're talking about is commonly conflated.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the things that I find is one of the easiest way to break down an argument is to find an inconsistency. If there is an inconsistency, it means the argument doesn't work. It doesn't function. It is not so you can apply it to theists by saying, hey, you're not okay with gay people, but you're okay with football. you're fine with listening to it here, but not here, or you don't do this when this applies here. You're not consistent with what you're saying. You can do it with atheism when you get to the lack theist. It's an inconsistent well, not an axiom. It's an inconsistent schema. There's the word.
Yeah.
Lately, I found a lot of utility in presenting their premise back to them in the form of the negation, and then asking them, okay, well, if you believe that was true, this is the negation. Do you believe that this is false? If you don't believe this is false, then you need to reconsider your premise.
Yep. We got another caller. Is that the Canadian atheist? Hello.
Well, hello, Cheshire. Hello.
Oh,
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Hello, Jime.
Yeah, and by the way, real quick, we're I think maybe next Caffeine Corner, we might talk about Rappaport's rules and things of that nature of expressing people's arguments back to them to see if they actually understand. And there's different rules that are in a discourse for that. And I think it might be a good topic to go over maybe next Caffeine Corner because I think it really does help to do that.
I'm going to hop out of here and let somebody else get a chance to talk, but it was good talking to you guys.
Thank you, Jim.
See you in the live chat.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Thanks for calling, Jim. It's good to hear from you.
Bye, guys. Love y'all.
All right. So,
Bye.
Michael.
Take care, Jim.
Another.
Sir.
Oh, by the way, it's so funny, Michael, because according to what I understand from atheists, Jim doesn't exist because they have told me there are no atheists that believe there are no gods. They don't exist.
And that nobody wants to talk to us, which is why we have a call-in show like at least once a month almost at this point.
That's probably the direction of where Caffeine Corner is going to go. By the way, we do appreciate that people can share these videos and get them out to forums and let theists and atheists and anybody else wants to call in know. But anyways, how are you?
Everything's really good. Yeah, I'm sorry that I called in because I'm not going to disagree with a lot of what you said. It's interesting. I added to the chat a little while ago saying, in the super chat, like, I don't understand why atheists are so afraid of a burden of proof. And I'll just reference back, and this has been said a bunch of times. I've said it to you a bunch of times that, when you put out your paper, a couple of years ago now, I was like, this is bullshit. Crinkled it up and threw it in my waste paper basket. Then I actually read it. And it's the simplest thing. Yeah. It's the simplest thing in the world to justify if you just take 10 seconds and actually think about it a little bit. And so it's just really not that big a deal. And I hear the arguments back and forth and stuff like that. And even the post you're reading now, Steve. Like I think the only thing that I put in it that was even a little bit disagreeable between the two of us is that I think it depends on the claim that someone's making, whether or not they have some type of burden. But the part that you put in about whether or not they want to, are trying to persuade you, I think that closes the book. If they're not trying to persuade you, who cares? Like, why are you even having the conversation? Maybe it's just a statement of facts between two people. But if you're trying to persuade someone,
right. That's why it's the burden of persuasion.
With...
There's burden of persuasion and burden of production, which actually came from the legal term onus probandi, which was the burden of production. A burden of production was just, hey, is there enough evidence to even bring this to a case? And burden of persuasion was, is there enough to convince a judge or jury?
I think he also is like that has a lot to do with the social contract, right? So it has to do with whether or not you would technically have a burden of proof. You may not. You may just be stating your opinion. But when you go into a conversation and you throw that out there, you are entering a social situation where it's kind of assumed that you're going to be having so if you choose to engage, it's assumed that you're engaging. So when you try to be like, well, no, I don't have to engage. Well, why are you here?
Yeah. Well, they think everything is an engagement on the internet. It's like, hey, Steve, what do you think of this? I'm just going to tell you what I think of it. Oh, well, give me all your evidence for this. I'm not going to waste my time giving you all my reasons for this on a Twitter thing. You asked
me my opinion. Exploratory Minds for 10. Sorry, I'm just going to get the super chat real quick. Exploratory Minds for 10 says, I totally get the consistency thing, as it seems if there is no consistency, it's either showing a person is hiding something or confused or genuinely dishonest.
Yeah, and that's what I find when I have these discussions. The reason I like consistency, Ozzy says he doesn't think it's much of a value. I disagree, Ozzy. I think it's extremely valuable because when I have these discussions, I see people having inconsistencies in their argumentation. I never know what their actual positions are. They go from one thing to the other because they just have so much inconsistency in their statements. I don't know what to believe. And so it's really confusing. So that's why I want them to be consistent, whether they pick a schema and go with it. Like, for example, if I started talking about a schema of classical theism, then I jump to non-classical theism, and I jump back and forth, it's going to be confusing. I want a consistency and say, look, I'm working in this system. I'm working in this schema. Pick a lane and stay in it for the discussion. That's all I ask. Other people may not find value there. I do.
One thing I think that's interesting is that when you turn this to, and we can be talking about a burden of proof for any specific thing. Chesh mentioned earlier fairies and pixies and stuff like that. But when we're talking about religion, when we're talking about gods, I don't think it's unfair to say that the theist is almost always trying to convince you. They are trying to persuade you.
But that's because of their religious duty that they feel, right? They believe there's an actual duty to their God in order to promote the good word, right? So that's something that's interwoven in their actual beliefs in itself. Now, let's say that it wasn't. Let's say if they had to believe in a God, hypothetically, that God doesn't command them to go out and spread the word. God just says, hey, look, this is for your information only. Everybody else, fuck them, kind of thing. In that particular case, they don't have they wouldn't be going out trying to persuade you. But I think that you're right that they do have that ingrained in their own belief system. Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more of a...
that theist that you mentioned, Steve, that theist that you mentioned just now, we wouldn't even know that they were a theist because they wouldn't tell anybody.
Well, yeah, in some countries,
I'm a lack atheist.
In
the
some,
fuck is that?
in some countries, if you're the wrong religion, you can get killed for it, right? If you have the wrong belief system, you can get killed for it. If you're an atheist, you can get killed for it. So there's a lot of times that people don't tell people what their actual beliefs are because it can cause actual harm. And I totally understand that. But when you do relate your position, that's not necessarily the case where you have a burden of proof to actually convince anybody anything. I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince anybody of anything. If if they ask me what my position is and I tell them, and then they start going down these rabbit holes, give me all your reasons for this. I'm not going to bother with that in this discussion. I don't have a discursory obligation. And people may disagree with that. That's fine. These are my positions. Yeah. I'm allowed to have my own beliefs.
Yeah. And it happens with me a fair bit. Where I'll ask that question. Oh, are you religious? Do you believe in God? Yes. And I'll ask them why. And some have said, I don't want to talk about that. Okay, cool. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes. Yeah, let me correct. Where they're not interested in talking about it.
Let me correct something. I didn't mean to say that Ozzy didn't say. He says I didn't say consistency was no value. Yeah, yes, and that's true. But that's generally overvalued, is what he said. People tend to equate consistency with veracity. Think of precept. Yeah, and there are cases, obviously, where you are consistent, like in precept. But I don't fault the precept for that. If a precept is consistent, that is done. That's like, okay.
That's not a problem with overvaluing.
Now look at the other problems that you have, right? So consistency is not the only value.
Right. Well, what he says is that he's saying, sorry, let me... consistency is overvalued because people make a mistake about it. That's not people overvaluing consistency. That's people not are falsely equating two different things. That's the problem, not overvaluing something. Res for 2 says, I just got here because I was working. This super chat is proof. And Oppie for 4.99 said, on Answers and Reason, that's what that is, right? Answers and Reason? AIR?
Answers and AIR, yeah.
Yeah, is that right? Okay. I show what naturalism is and that it can meet a burden of proof.
Yep. Thank you, Rez. Appreciate it. AIR is a great show. I don't listen as much as I should, but I usually get a synopsis. But I read the blogs. But AIR is Trolley Dave and David and Joe, and they basically, we all kind of epistemically seem to have the similar type beliefs, which is nice. So
listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I definitely want to get other people in here if they want to get in here, but thanks for taking the call. Hope to chat with you guys again soon and get you back on the podcast when it works out, when the time is right. And God don't exist.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we've already been on like 3 or 4 times, I think, and we're happy to come on again anytime. So.
Well, we had chatted about it, and you said basically once the non-sex stuff is sewn up, that would be the next good time.
I think so. Yep. And we are right now.
Hey.
Like I said, Kyle missed his deadline, so we're just waiting for a hearing to be scheduled.
Fucking hell.
So thank you, my friend.
Yeah, to the hearing that he probably won't go home from.
Oh, he won't show up. I have no expectation of him showing up. Come on. He's had 5 failure to appears. I'm not holding in my breath.
I think that's a reasonable expectation at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's guaranteed 30 days jail for the criminal contempt. He'll be in civil contempt as long as he's in breach of the turning everything over, which, by the way, is a lot of stuff. And so as long as he can go up to 90 days without, and now that he doesn't have a lawyer, he has really, no way to really even negotiate all the stuff that he needs to turn over. And I don't think he even knows. So.
Well, listen, according to your ticker, it's only been 635 days. So try to be patient.
Yeah. Well, at this point, that's all I have is patience, man. I moved on to other things, so it's kind of in the back of my mind. I don't focus on it at all. We have other projects. Cheshire's has her channel that she's been doing great shows on. I have Agree to Argue that I do once a month, that I do Wednesdays. We obviously do Caffeine Corner on Monday. We've got all these different things that we do, and it's fine. We're doing.
You guys
okay.
are doing great. It's fun to watch. You're kicking ass. So it's good. I'll let you guys go.
Yep. So
have a good day.
Chat soon.
So there is something that he was bringing up that I think is valuable to maybe touch on a little bit more, and it's that social construct of what is and is not, where the burden of proof lies, and what happens when somebody just kind of enters a conversation and then just starts making like arbitrary demands of other people. So if theists are having a discussion and they say, hey, listen, I believe this, this, and this, and they're talking amongst themselves, and an atheist pops in and says, well, I don't believe you. And then they say, why? Well, it's on you to prove it. And they go,
right.
But that's not what I asked. And then why are you here? You're like throwing a ball. And then just being like, no.
Come play with me. Yeah, I've seen that happen too. It's not like, let's say like even Joe and I are having a conversation on somewhere, right? And we're both using the same terminology kind of thing. Sure. And then somebody jumps in the conversation. You guys are using words wrong kind of thing. It's like, who the hell are you? Stop it. Just go away. I mean, it's just like, I'm not going to waste my time
water
with
spray
you.
bottle, just
Well, that's how Matt Dillahunty blocked me. He did the exact same thing, as people know. I mean, literally, I'm talking about multi-valued logics with somebody, specifically 3-valued logics where you can have...
Yeah, that was Matt Dillahunty doesn't know how Twitter works.
Yeah, I was like, true, false, or unknown, right, as a value, right? And so to me, that is a little bit better way of using logics to describe beliefs, I think, right? I'm fine. And that's what we were just discussing. How we would use 3-value logics for this. And, Matt Dillahunty comes in out of nowhere. Nobody tagged him, just poof in, you're wrong. Like,
and then the conversation continues. And then the conversation continues without him, and then he complains that you kept tagging him. It's like, no, you tagged yourself.
Yeah, and I was like, he said, well, you either believe or you don't believe. I'm like, no shit. That's great. What does that got to do with our discussion, man? But I see this happen all the freaking time with people. I mean, it's like, look, if you want to jump into discussion, great. They're public forums on Twitter. They're public on Facebook. Knock yourself out, right? But at least add something of value to the conversation. Don't just say you're wrong. Boom.
I think it would be fun to do a counter show where we say people call in and they say they lack a belief in God, and we say prove it.
Prove it.
And then it's just like, well, why not? I don't believe you.
And that's why whenever people, I don't want to spend too much time on it. They say something like, well, I don't believe you. Where's your evidence for this? And they never give any. And then they do. The only evidence I've seen new atheist TM give is not even evidence. They just cite some Google dictionary. And I'm like, that's your resource? That's where you want to go with these conversations? Google dictionary. Okay.
Who we got?
Hello, you guys. What's up?
Hey, Mr. Serious.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just saw that all the other callers have gone away, so of course I'm coming here to play.
Hey!
You have that presence with people. They fear you.
Oh yeah, they could smell me coming a mile away.
That's why some of those trolls won't ever actually go after you. They're afraid of you.
I mean, I don't know. Duke, for instance, like I come out And I'm like, okay, I'm tired of this. Like, I've been watching this for like a day, like a full day. And I'm going to call him out from what I saw like 3 tweets in. Like, I saw this and it's not changed. And I'm just going to call him out on what I saw from the beginning. And he like never replied to any of the things that I was saying. And then he blocked me.
Yeah, well, he blocked us too. And he blocked everybody else in that whole thread. So he's screaming into the void. And he's always done that. He literally had said something along the lines of, well, he didn't understand how a Venn diagram kind of worked. I don't remember exact wording, but I know Intrigue Feline and a few other people were trying to explain it to him, even though I haven't blocked. I pay attention. And then he's just like telling them that they're wrong. And it's just like, well, where did they go wrong? Now, Intrigue Feline did make one mistake. It was noted, it was caught and fixed. That's okay, big deal. But he didn't even catch that. He didn't catch that mistake.
No, what he said, and I quote, "I don't know what a Venn diagram is."
Yeah.
Oh, technically, he did catch one more mistake, because he's such a very
astute,
very honest guy. He's like, hey, Manya, I don't know what a Venn diagram is.
Because of a typo.
Yeah. Here's my thing, and I'll say this.
The conversation's broken down into nonsense when that starts happening.
When you are dealing with an interlocutor, you're dealing with somebody on the internet, and they start criticizing grammar or spelling, you know you've got to them. You got to them.
I do it once in a blue moon, and it's usually because the person is already pissed off and isn't on topic anymore and is already like spitting into the void, and it's just like a little bit of like I just spit on your grave a little bit. Yeah, and
the only time I've ever done it I can really think of is it's like somebody corrects and they get it wrong in their correction, and then you correct them. That's funny. Yeah.
And then I do it to friends sometimes. Feline does it to me all the time. It's like become a running joke because you can tell the difference between when I'm typing on my phone early or really late at night versus when I'm like typing on my computer.
I do speech to text sometimes, and it gets way off.
It's so funny. It's
you know how I do. You know how I always tell when I'm on speech to text when I say the word shit and it puts asterisk there.
Yeah,
I'm on my speech to text. But the funniest thing was on the Twitter. There's this guy named Philosophy Grove. Clearly, this guy's talking about all kinds of stuff that I just have no interest in, Bibles type stuff. And people are still going, "That's Steve's stock account." I'm like, when the hell did I become a Bible person talking about the Bible? I don't know half the stuff he's talking about. So if that's me, that's cool. But I have no other stock accounts than the one I use. That's Steve McCrae. That's it.
Did you notice that pretty much all of the people saying Steve has hundreds of sock accounts, all of that has kind of like nobody's talking about anymore? I think the only times I see stuff like that is like, oh, Steve senses mob because somebody says you're wrong. And then it's just like, these people do not understand how Twitter works. If somebody follows you, enters a conversation, the longer that conversation goes on, the more likely one of those things that they said is going to show up in your feed. And then you're going to click on it and be like, what's happening? And you look and you're like, what?
Why, I know that the stuff that I put out there is right, and if it isn't, it's quickly corrected because people will point it out to me. And so we have a self-correcting type system because a lot of people will look at it and go, yeah, we think there's a mistake. We do it to each other. That's how we keep each other, making sure we have correct information. And so...
Yeah.
Why would I use sock accounts for that? Yeah, I don't. I've never communicated with anybody on a sock account other than my own main account. That's it. That's my account. I have other accounts, but I've never used them to tweet to anybody on them. I've tweeted from them, but never had a conversation. Does that make sense?
I think my favorite is the idea that Steve tweets stuff out and then Intrigue Feline corrects him, but Intrigue Feline is Steve. So Steve tweeted something he knew was incorrect and then corrected himself on another account. And so he could go, oh, thanks for correcting me.
Yeah. Self-correcting. No, but they have to do that. They have a hard time accepting that there are people that agree with me, and they don't get that. Even on Facebook, anybody who agrees with me is also now a troll. They've called both Trolley Dave and Joe from Answers and Reasons my minions, and that they're trolls and they don't know what they're talking about, and that they should go take a course in philosophy. And Dave's like, I have a master's degree, I'm working on my doctorate in philosophy. What the hell? Oh, well, now you're just arguing by credentials. Well, no, what?
Now that also reminds me kind of like when it comes to like sending your mob. Like where, like it just brings me right back to the Duke thing. I'm sorry if anybody out there is not blocked by him. Go check out his recent tweets. You can go get a very interesting lesson in how not to implement charity in a conversation.
I'll put a link in the chat for you.
He doesn't know what principle charity is, and first of all, it's always.
I did ask him.
It seems to be extended to him quite often, but he
whole time.
is. But here's the thing about new atheist TMs. They will always look for the way of looking at the least charitable thing that you said. They do it to me all the time. And so when people say, well, why are you so kind of, strict in what you type and stuff like that, is because I know there are people out there that are going to take the least charitable approach. And they still will, even if I think that I've said something, pretty well unable to be taking things out of context, they'll find a way to do it.
That's not a sock. This is a sock.
But where, like, what did that thread start as? Where did he even come from? Do you know?
Well, do you mean where did he come from, as in where that, like,
you didn't watch my
that
debate
particular thread, or are you talking about like why he's showing up the way he is?
Like I know where the thread started, but then here's Duke asking us a question out of nowhere.
But I mean, do you know hang on one second. Did you watch my debate with him?
Yes.
Okay, so he has had a grudge against me for 2 years or whatever it was, because he got thoroughly trounced. He didn't know anything about the topic. And even the comments, even the people that hate me were like, holy shit, even Duke got smashed.
And it's like, it's a situation where anything now related to Steve, he will try and insert himself into that conversation to not talk about that conversation, to make whoever is talking talk about what he wants to talk about, so he can preach to people about how Steve is wrong without actually ever being able to demonstrate that, and then look for excuses to not engage in the conversation that he started. But on top of that is, like, because our community is as awesome as they are, they usually just take it in stride and be like, hey, listen, you want to talk about your question? No problem. We can do both of these conversations at the same time. Thread goes this way, thread goes that way. And people are like, yeah, we'll answer your question. Let's go have this conversation while we're at it. So, like, just the fact that they engaged with him when he was clearly, like, way out of left field about, like, what the thread was talking about is charity on its own.
That is absolutely 100%. I agree with you. Everybody who interacted with him, you guys get A+ for the week. You guys were all amazing. Intrigued Feline. I know you were really, like, you were. I think Intrigued Feline probably, and Letty. I know Letty was there. I can't remember all the names of people. Everybody was there, but everybody who interacted with them, you were all great. But I would have been like, as soon as I saw him appear, it was like, this guy is sus. Like, immediately. Like, it goes from getting like 100% charity from me, he just automatically goes down to like 70.
Yeah,
like,
I could have told you that. He's been doing this for 2 years. So jump into a conversation,
Yeah.
spew his nonsense everywhere. People will go, what the hell is he talking about? He's completely wrong and inept. And he'll just go, oh, you guys are just Steve minions. That's what he does. I mean,
Oh my God. AT2 is in the side chat saying, I just want to say thank you for what? For that glorious chew toy on Twitter that is still going.
oh, he's been enjoying.
They're
Yeah, Jared's been
still
enjoying
going.
it. Yeah.
I could not get over the, what tool do you use to communicate? Communication.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You use communication to communicate. And I'm like, I can't
I
get
laid back down
crayons.
this morning
Where's my crayons?
And I left that.
I need a snack.
I left
Brain
that.
food.
I left those people for Jared. I'm like, have at it, because I know he loves those things. But I laid back down before the show, and I came back, and they were still going on. I'm like, holy shit, this is like, just
That's bait.
Yeah, but they're. I'm telling you, the things
Jared's
that they're
better
saying
at it
is
than
just,
they are.
Yeah, they don't. I don't even know where to go with it. But let me read the super chat and we'll get resin here. Helios, $5. We fight over who gets to point out when Steve makes an error. They do. It's like a game. It's more violent than 3 teenagers fighting for who gets shotgun in a fancy car. They do. It's like point system. It's like, oh, okay, who can point out Steve's errors? But here's the thing: with 95% of the time when they point out one of my errors, it's because there's a mistake, there's a typo, there's something
95%.
wrong.
Oh my God, I'm adding that to my soundboard.
I fix it. That's how it works, right? I mean, these things are kind of objective things. Let's say, hey, Steve, you have don't you mean this? Oh, yes, I do. Let me fix that.
I'm gonna grab that audio clip of Kyle saying, "I do 95% of the work," and I'm putting that on a soundboard. I'm keeping that.
But that's what I like when people when they actually point out something that's wrong. When I'm on Facebook and they say, "Hey, you're wrong," and then they say something completely stupid, it's like, no, that's not showing that I'm wrong. If you're going to say that I'm wrong, show me that I'm wrong using something that makes sense. I'm not an idiot. I can see I used the wrong sign or I said the wrong thing. I could read it and go, yeah, you're right. Just the other day, somebody on Facebook actually said, "Hey, I think you misstated this. Isn't it this?" And I read it. I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So what I do? I fixed it. Why? Because they've said, "This is what you said. Don't you mean this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's not that hard to correct me. Not that hard."
And also, I'm not the smartest guy, but I'll know if you're like trying to bullshit me, if you're trying to tell me that somebody's wrong and you're telling me that they're an idiot. Like, I mean, it's very obvious that you have something against them, and maybe that's why you're trying to tell me how wrong they are.
Your bias is showing.
Has Duke ever said anything to you that makes sense?
No.
There you go.
Hi, Rez. How you doing?
Hi, Rez, my friend.
I'm exhausted after coming off an 8-hour shift, but I can't complain because I earned $240 in one night.
So that prostitution thing's working out pretty well in Australia with the kangaroos?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I told you, man.
So, a couple of things. When you say call in, using what?
Phone, Skype, Google.
Okay.
You could use. You can use. If you have voice over IP with Gmail.
You can come in on just an internet connection.
Yeah, or I can just give you a direct link. I generally don't give out the direct link, but I will today. But I'd rather have people call in than get the direct link. But
I use Google
Voice
Voice
right now. They can come in the direct link.
I didn't know if there'd be like a cost associated with like calling from Australia or something like that.
No, I do got to fix this.
I don't think so.
So I can at least. I just want to show Cheshire. That way, everybody does use the direct link. It won't be a problem.
So can this entire stream be summed up with something stupid Hunty said? The conversation.
It wasn't even about Matt.
Oh, okay. Because I came in at 77-minute mark, so I was kind of confused as to what kind of stupidity we were talking about.
It was. I think what we brought up with Matt was the people who don't know how Twitter works and who basically
gotcha.
When people will jump into the pool and then immediately get out saying, "Don't get me wet," when they come into a conversation that two people or even a group of people are having, and then they come in and just spout their opinion and then say, "Well, I don't have to justify my opinion to you." It's like, then why are you here?
Well,
then why are you trying to justify your opinion to somebody else?
Exactly, and I think what's happening is that we're finally seeing a noticeable effect. There are a lot of people now that know our arguments. There's a lot of people that recognize some of the issues that we've talked about for years. There's a lot of people that recognize that the atheist experience is probably not the go-to place to learn philosophy.
Nobody listened to Steve until I showed up and made him understandable.
Yeah, she's like the Steve Whisperer.
I am the Steve Whisperer.
Yeah. And so and they're getting a lot more pushback nowadays. And it's not just from your lay atheists. There are a lot of people that are pretty recognizable that are going, yeah, maybe this isn't the best approach. And it doesn't mean that atheists are going to have a following. Of course they are. But even their own mods have questioned them. I don't know if you know this.
Nothing is even saying that they shouldn't have a following. It's just all they need to do is take a slight step to the left, just a slight step to the side, and just say, "This is the way we're using it here because it's appropriate for our show and the platform that we have and the conversation we want to have. If you want to talk about this, we're not going to tell you you're wrong. We're just going to say that's not how we're using it here. If you want to have this conversation, go over here." I think Steve and I are more than amicable enough to let bygones be bygones and no, we'll work with you. We'll help you out. We will. You could even have specials between you guys and us where we're bringing in, we can bring to your audience our stuff, and you can bring to our audience your your street epistemology style stuff. We can all work together and up the quality and stop being dicks for no reason.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that actually. But like I said, the Atheist Community of Austin Discord changed their name to Atheist it was the atheist community of Austin. Now it's the atheist community Discord. They actually have been distancing themselves because the atheist community has been telling them how to run their Discord, and they're like, no, because they've got really much. They used to get into the atheism plus thing, but they're still getting into this social justice thing. It's all about feelings, not to come down on some other talk show, other shows that I do kind of watch. I mean, every so often I'll watch like Talk Heathen, but even they have gotten into all about feelings. It's not even a matter of let's discuss the arguments or discuss the reasoning or the logic or it is, how does this make me feel kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't.
Well, I mean, like
which is fine for them, but I mean,
Eric's kind of style is about that and
right.
reaching out to people on an emotional and on like a connection. And I think that's good. I think that's a great thing, especially if it's going to be specific to that show. That's fine. You can totally build a show about that. Yeah. Just don't tell people they're wrong when they're not wrong, and just tell them where to find the information. And guess what? We're an easy source for this information. And for the most part, we like you guys. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, Eric Murphy had a thing on Facebook, and I was talking to him on Facebook, and we're catching up because I really like the guy. I was wishing him well and that he's happy and all this other stuff. And then one of his other, it's like I guess it's a mod for him or something because she used to promote, or she was promoting his shows and the Atheist Experience shows. Just was like, Steve, you're wrong. You've been told you're wrong. Eric has shown you're wrong. I'm like, Eric's never shown I was wrong. What the hell are you talking about? I know, Eric. What the hell are you talking about? And she kept on saying, well, all these experts are saying you're wrong. Okay, can you name me one? No. Can you show that logic's wrong? No. You couldn't produce a shred of evidence. So do you know what this person actually said?
If I had a mod that did that publicly, they would not be a mod anymore.
It was. I think she's a mod from. I'm not positive, but she was heavily promoting the Atheist Experience type shows, including Talk Heathen and Truth Wanted with Objectively Dan. But she kept on saying, Eric has shown that I'm wrong. I know Eric. This is not the case. But eventually, like, for example, she was the one that said, hey, Steve, your Venn diagram's wrong. And I'm like, oh, really? You might want to run it by somebody. And she did. And she said,
on Twitter? I think I remember this.
No, this was on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
She did. And her expert said, no, that Venn is actually correct. And so she was like, well, we're both right. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. But the fact is,
you're either right or you're wrong in this case. You can't you either believe or you don't believe.
But she kept on saying that I had been shown that my arguments were flawed, and you gotta keep bringing up Eric's name. But here's the thing: do you know? After a while, what she started doing? She started posting all these videos from trolls, people of mine, and I'm like, look,
of course.
And this is what I told her. I said, listen, this is the direction you want to go because now you're moving it away from the discourse, and you want to bring in people that have actively tried to harm me and people that I love. I will block you and we'll be done with this forever. And she says, why not? You block anybody that disagrees with you. And I'm like, it's not a matter of disagreement. You have now gone this full of crazy bullshit, posting people's videos that have not shown that I'm wrong, but have actually gone out of the way to try to harm me and people that I care about. Bye-bye.
That's like
that's
showing
the easiest way to be excised from my existence.
That's like saying, hey, you're wrong. Here's a video of this person who's been stalking you. Yeah. Talking about you.
Here's a video from
victimizing that person.
Here's a video from your rapist that has said this about you, kind of thing.
It's just re-victimizing.
Yeah, and somebody. So those people get blocked instantly, and I forget them. I don't remember her name. I just forget it. I'm like, that's done. But that's what happens when people are unable to actually argue the points, right? They go down this weird, bizarre. Don't
send somebody a video like trying to like counter their argument by sending them a video from the guy who wears Steve's face as a mask in his kitchen, you fucking moron. Yeah. Golden Unicorn for 20 said, why would they tweet, referring to Duke, why would they tweet on a thread discussing a completely different topic to ask Chesh about what when she was making a video on another topic? Like, why not make a new tweet/thread with that question and tag Chesh there? Sorry, not sorry. The answer is because he wants more attention and a higher priority than I was giving him, because he did actually ask me on another thread and in a different place. And I said, when I get to it, he said thumbs up and then came back again on another thread. So guess he wasn't happy with that answer.
Yeah. Anyways, and it's so funny because you were actually giving him a lot more principle charity than he would ever with you, but he was like, well, I don't understand this.
Oh, I know.
You're like, okay, let me explain it to you.
The last time I tried to engage him, because I was like, it seemed like you're just kind of butthurt about it, he started talking about how I had your cum in my mouth.
Yeah. I remember that. Real quick, we got a new thing, and I did put. Remember that image you sent me because I think it's great. Hatred on the bottom, dishonesty, and the level stupid. That's what we run into. This is something I live every single day of my life with people on Facebook and Twitter. But again, I use Twitter and Facebook to run these arguments and to get feedback and to see the stupidity out there and then talk about them on the shows. Why? So you can avoid those pitfalls. So you don't do those stupid shit things that I see people do by mainly making things personal about a person rather than actually addressing what they have to argue. And I'm sorry, but if you argue things like A does not equal A, you better have some good reasons for it. Even then, it's just not possible to do so. But you can't just say you're wrong about that, Steve. A doesn't equal A, and then say, oh, you're a mean poopy head because you're Steve.
That's where does that person who said that they use communication as a tool to communicate fall in that?
Yeah, they're pretty up there. I mean, and then she started outright lying about me and AT2 Jared. She's like, Steve insists that if I don't say gods don't exist, I'm not a real atheist. And we're like, both of us like, neither one of us said that. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then she's like, saying that I was like attacking, what's her name? Heathen atheist, is that her name?
Sweet.
No, not sweet.
Sweet atheist.
Sweet, whatever.
Something like that.
Something like that. And I'm like,
I'll pull it up.
I was not attacking her. We follow each other. I'm actually trying to help her because she was legit asking me questions, and I asked her if you want to learn how to understand this, I'll teach you. And she's like, yeah, please. That's not attacking people. By the way, somebody did ask about Sweet Heathen, and she is okay. Helios said,
Sassy. That's what it was. Sassy heathen.
But Helios said, hey, Steve, say hi to Sweet Heathen. I will. For me, at some point, I haven't seen her around and miss her. She has a lot going on with her own personal life right now, and she wishes everybody well, I'm sure. But she's just got her own stuff going on right now.
Everybody has their own lives.
Yep. And she said she hates Helios and never wants to talk to him. Oh, wait, no, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. She loves Helios. But yeah, by the way, I will express your concern to her that people are saying hi to her. Okay, so who do we got here? New person.
Hey, this is Clint Smith, Steve. I don't know if we talked a couple times on Twitter. You actually brought me out of the whole just new atheist thing.
Oh,
this is
awesome.
Turning into a recovery Colin show.
Well,
I love it.
People, I've said we have made so much progress and
recovering from new atheism plus TM.
And the best part is people that have come out of new atheism TM have become so much better at arguing against theists. It's ridiculous. But anyways, go ahead, Clark. Clark, right?
Yeah. So,
how are you? How you doing?
Clint or Clinton?
Clint, yes,
I've got
Clint.
two issues with the whole new atheism thing. I don't really care what you identify or how you label yourself, whatever, doesn't matter. We have very similar views on that. But what kills me is, number one, these new atheists, especially like Atheist Experience, they don't tell you that there is another philosophical definition. They don't let that known. They just say... They
did it for a long time until we started going, wait a minute, nope. Problem here.
Yeah, they say atheism is a lack of belief. When somebody calls in, they say, their understanding of atheism, they go, nope, atheism is lack of belief. That's it. Well, me being, for lack of a better term at the time, a new atheist, well, to me, I'm like, oh, well, that's what it is. Because I didn't know anything about philosophy. I didn't know anything about atheism. I'm listening to these people that I think are qualified and actually know something because they have a lot of these YouTube atheists saying with a lot of followers, Atheist Experience. So I go to talk to, because I'm in the South, all my family, all my friends, they're all Christians. They still go to church. Well, they want me to go to church with them because, hey, Clint, who's a lifelong Christian, now saying he's an atheist. So I talk to pastors, I talk to anybody that has anything to do with the church in good ways, like not being mean or anything like that. They were just really good.
It's an open dialogue.
So when I say atheism is a lack of belief, and they look at me like I'm an idiot, and I don't know why, that makes it look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't, because these new atheists are saying it's a lack of belief.
Right. They're kind of setting you up for failure. Yeah.
It does. And it made me sound like an idiot. So then I'm going and Googling stuff, but I'm not really knowing where to start. And then that's when I came across Steve a long time ago on a Twitter post that this is what atheism is. And I think I sent you a message or like commented on it, like, hey, can you send me where you're getting this from?
Yeah, I remember that. And by the way, I do differentiate between New Atheist TM and New Atheist. There is a group, New Atheist, which is like the Dawkins and the Dennett's and the Hitchens. And I'm not talking about that group. I'm not talking about New Atheism.
Well, who you'll notice
right. So I'm talking about a very specific subset of that called New Atheism TM, we call it.
That specific group also, the Lacktheism, the New Atheism plus TM group. Yeah. Because like I found in at least what I was watching, I mean, there's probably more than one debate that I missed, and it's been some time since I watched their debates, but it seemed to me that their discussion was more based around not so much the existence of God and more based around the problems of religion and like the misapplication of atheism being either a religion or being devil worship. So like that was where they seemed to be focused most of the time, and now the focus
those are better episodes though.
Well, those are far more. There's more to talk about there when it comes
That's
to
when Tracy
the social.
Harris was on the ASB. They were talking about that kind of stuff more. But But yeah, I appreciate what you're saying because, they'll talk out of both sides of their mouths, right? They'll say, look, now they recognize that there are other usages, although I'm still wrong, everybody else is still wrong. But you still have the American atheist out there going, hey, look, atheism is one thing. It's a lack of belief in God. That's it. That's what they say. It's one thing, a lack of belief in God. There's no other thing. And, obviously we still have people like Arn who will argue, hey, atheism is one thing. Anything else is wrong. He has said this. Anything else is wrong. Rocks are atheist. If I'm right, then his entire life's work is for naught, his words. But these are the absurdities that most atheists will go, hey, wait a minute here. I don't want to be associated with a group that think rocks are atheist, right? And I don't blame them. I'm a non-believer. I don't want to be in that group with people that think rocks are atheist or even agnostic, because I've had even people, dishonest lawyers, go, Steve promotes rocks are agnostic. Bullshit. That never happened. That was somebody took a video and manipulated it and took it out of context. Clearly, because I've never advocated that position. I've only tried to say, look, if you believe this, and this seems to follow from your internal critique, right? But yeah,
well,
so I don't want to be associated with that type of crowd either.
I mean, cherry picking, right?
And I'll make my second point real quick, and then I'll hop off.
No worries.
So y'all can get me. But my second problem is when Matt Dillahunty on Atheist Experience said, well, if they're agnostic, they're theological non-cogs, etc., whatever, well, they're atheists whether they like it or not.
Right. I heard them say that. Yes. Dillahunty has said that numerous times. I get that in Facebook groups all the time. Hey, you're born an atheist. You're an atheist whether you like it or not. Seth Andrews says that, before, and he says it in jest, but I think he does actually mean it. But we all know that's bullshit. And here's the thing, though. When you start getting into the philosophy, you start getting into the understanding of the topics, where do you go with somebody who just makes these fiat by fiat statements where they don't read anything, they don't want to learn, they don't care about the logic, they don't care about the problems, they're happy to admit rocks are atheist, they won't refute the WASP argument. It's like you're not dealing with a rational person at that point. I mean, you might as well be talking to a flat earther. I don't really see that much difference. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but I don't see much different because their argumentation styles are exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, but use whatever definition you want, but just be aware that you might be using the colloquial definition, and there are more philosophical definitions that someone else might use. As long as you're aware of
That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, but see, like Ozzy, like Ozzy says, in fairness to the Atheist Experience show, every one of their videos for some time now, after they've had to recognize that people were going to them going, hey, there's a problem here, explicitly states that they define atheism a certain way. Yes, but then they make it categorical. That's the issue I have with them, Ozzy. They make it categorical that it's not just the way they defined it. It is ubiquitous in academia that way. They try to make it out to be. And if anybody says otherwise, it has been hijacked by theists. I've had this argument all the time. It has been hijacked by theists if there's anything other than this. So it's not that they say, hey, look, we use atheism this way, but in philosophy it might be used differently. They sometimes do say this, but then the next episode they'll be like, no, it's only this. Any other thing is wrong. They talk out of both sides of their mouths. I've seen it happen. People send me these clips.
Well, there's a Matt Dillahunty video where he talks to Ozzy and Alex Malpass, and they explain it to him in detail. Hey, you're wrong about this. And
I've seen all those videos. I mean,
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I mean,
but
many
it's
times.
Frustrating to go back when after you sent me SCP and some other sources to read, I started realizing, like, oh shit, like I'm wrong. And then I started kind of looking back into older Matt Dillahunty videos because that's where I heard Lack Theist from. And then I start seeing actual philosophers like Malpass explaining it to him. I'm like, damn it. Like, I feel like I was misled like I was when I was a damn Christian.
Stephen Law was interviewed the other day by a couple people. One of them guys' name is not Destroyer, but it's something similar. I talked to him on the Discord every so often, so I know who he is. And then he was actually saying the same things we were saying. And it's just like, I've never had a discussion with Dr. Law before. He's a pretty well-known philosopher. But they were asking him, hey, what do you think about this, this, and this? He's like, yeah, well, this is how it is. But he's like, it all depends on usages. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's fine. Define things the way you want. But when people will tell me, hey, I'm wrong for using it in the way that I'm using it, which is basically how it's generally understood in the literature, that's where you just have to draw the line and go, wait a minute here. Look, you can use these terms any way you want, but don't tell me I'm wrong for using them in concordance with what the literature is using them, because I think this makes sense to do so. That's it, right? Because they're out there saying, look, Steve's wrong. They're out there saying, hey, this is only one thing. Atheism is a lack of belief that God exists. As a matter of fact, it's funny is American Atheist actually says atheism is not the disbelief that God exists, or denial. That's the two words they use. Disbelief. It is not disbelief or denial, which is funny because Matt will say that atheism is the denial and disbelief that God exists. But he doesn't understand that disbelief means to believe negation, right? He actually told a caller they were wrong for using that epistemic disposition as in believe negation, which is what it's understood to be. American Atheist gets it right as far as their uses of the epistemic disposition, but then they say, look, it's not this. Well, we all know that's bullshit, right? And they are making categorical statements about something, not just in their group. They need to add a little caveat. American Atheist was to say, atheism is not a disbelief or denial of God. It's a lack of God as we use the term in our group. Fine, done. I will never bother them ever again.
Yeah, well, it makes everyone have better conversations. Like, to me, the whole point when I first started deconverting from Christianity was that I liked about the atheist community was like, hey, we're trying to have good conversations here. Well, I have much better conversations after reading the stuff you sent me with Christians.
Thank you.
Having a better understanding of the philosophy, much better conversations that actually go somewhere instead of me just saying, no, it's just a lack of belief.
Right, because you get to argue against them. If I said to a precept, I don't believe you. No, I'm going to show you why you're wrong. I'm going to show you why precept is stupid. Okay.
Yeah. It makes it better for everyone involved if, hey, I believe there are no gods. Here's why. You believe there are gods. You believe in a Christian God. Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So being upfront and honest is usually a good way to have a conversation to actually get somewhere. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't you think? Okay, look.
Yeah.
All these discussions take time to learn. These are not easy subjects. Nobody claims that they are.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a theist, and theists do read about these things, right? Theists want to often the higher class theists. We're not talking about the go Jesus kind of people. But the actual theists that talk about these types of things, doesn't it help to understand what the hell they're talking about? If they want to argue the argument from contingency, if they want to argue the kalam, if they want to argue something like that, it helps to understand what the hell they're saying.
Yeah.
Not to say, well, I
For
don't
sure.
believe you. Okay, well,
Right.
why don't you believe about the Kalam? Well, let me
I think
I deny this premise. Let me
during-
tell you why.
I think during conversations, when you're entering conversations, because like I said, not every conversation is debate. It doesn't need to be treated that. It's not about points. And so, even if you want to like convince or persuade somebody that your position is a reasonable one, even if you're not trying to necessarily change their mind, you might want them to understand you. And one of the best ways to do that is to put a little bit of an emphasis on steel manning them, so that way they are confident that you understand where they're coming from and what they're saying. Because a lot of when a discussion turns into like a snippy argument is because somebody thinks that you don't understand what they're saying. And so if you can steelman them, then it avoids that kind of conflict when you start engaging about what you believe. So you can have an understanding of like, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't believe that. Why do you believe that? Versus, I don't believe you. You have to prove it to me, is not going to get you as far.
Yeah, and that's why I think next Caffeine Corner, we'll go over Rappaport's rules, and we'll go over some of that stuff that I think is valuable for that discussion. Ozzy said something that I'm in full agreement with. He says, I find I'm no longer in step with much what the ACA stands for. The wokeism, and they're antithetical to free thinking, skepticism, and critical thinking. Ever since Tracy Harris left, I've noticed that, Ozzy. I think Tracy Harris really had great conversations. I was a fan of her.
Really
I liked the way she presented. She had good arguments. But when she left, it all became about Matt Dillahunty's ego. It all became about, if you didn't like what you had to say, you can hang up, right? It got so bad they have a show now called The Hang Up, just because he'll just hang up on people that disagree with him. But
well, I've watched the Atheist Experience go from a show about having conversations to more of a televangelist type show. Where
it is evangelistic atheism. Yeah, absolutely it is. But here's the thing, Clint. You know what they're promoting, and I wrote a blog on this too. I think it was my second How to Trigger an Atheist Part 2. But I made the argument that if you think about it, Atheist Community of Austin is not promoting atheism in a philosophical sense. What they're promoting is agnosticism. They're promoting people just don't believe. They're not promoting believe there are no gods, right? I mean, because when they say positive atheism, they don't mean positive as in what like George Smith or Anthony Flew would have used the term. They don't mean it as in a positive epistemic status or a claim that God doesn't exist. They mean it to be happy, positive, a good front, good look to atheism, which is, more evangelical, right? They're promoting that. But what they're promoting for as far as a philosophical stance is a psychological position. They're not even promoting a position. They're promoting a psychological stance of mere not believing, which is essentially agnosticism, and they don't seem to realize this. And I find that to be hilarious, because I'm not promoting any disposition. I don't give a shit what you believe, don't believe it's false, whatever. I'm just curious about the conversation as to why and how you formulate these beliefs. But they're promoting non-belief. That's it. They're not promoting an atheism in the philosophical sense. I think that's hilarious myself.
Yeah,
and frankly, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Ozzy, you're right. Tracy Harris was definitely among the woke. And I know you're glad she left the ACA, but she was a good co-host for it. But the whole woke stuff, that's when the ACA started fracturing, right? So when Tracy Harris left, it was because of the woke stuff, and that split the entire ACA. If she hadn't had that woke shit, and she would have stuck with like the stuff that Cheshire was talking about earlier, with like religiosity, religion in schools and things of that nature, AXP would have continued in a way that I thought would have been good. But she was so hyper woke. Some of the new hosts they have are hyper woke. That destroyed the Atheist Experience channel for me. I won't even watch it any longer, because I'm not interested in that wokeness. I'm not interested in that Fifi culture. My feelings. Sure, it might work for them. It works for Talk Heathen. Eric's all about feelings, and good for him. I let the people watch that show. I don't care, but it's not my type of show to watch. I think the Atheist Experience left the dominion of critical thinking and free thought as soon as it said, "Look, if you don't think like us, if you are not woke with us, if you don't think exactly the way we do in these terminologies, and I'm not even talking about philosophical terminology, I'm talking about things like trans and things of that nature. If you don't agree with them lockstep, you are the enemy to them.
I like that they still kind of blame Steve for it.
No, they blame rationality rules for that. I didn't have anything to do with the woke split. I was the second schism, right? So the initial schism, well, there's 3 schisms actually of atheism. There's the atheism plus schism, which happened with the P.Z. Myers and all that group, and Thunderfoot. Then there was the trans schism, which occurred with rationality rules. And then there was the Stanford Encyclopedia schism, I guess. I don't know what the hell to call it, with me. So these have been the three dispensations of atheism.
Could you imagine like writing a book
Lutheran
about
Reformation.
that? I would actually, that'd be really interesting, and kind of write it the same way people write books about when the Catholic Church split into the Protestant and the Catholic. Just write it the exact same way, and just like, instead of like old painting, like, so get somebody to art in like old school sketchy paintings of like Steve and Aaron and Dillahunty, because that would be cool.
You're the artist. Well, yeah,
but
I'm telling you, people have told me that I caused splits in the ACA, and I it's funny because I do know a lot of them behind the scenes, and I've talked to like Jamie Boone numerous times on the phone, and Eric, and so I
Jamie and Eric seem like the most loveliest of friendly people, and I am so sad that I feel like I'm never gonna ever get a chance to talk to them.
I don't think
because
Jamie said a negative word about anybody.
Too many people hate me because I talk to you.
But have you ever heard Jamie Boone say a negative word about anybody? I don't think I ever have.
I think I've seen, like, on his own show, I think I've seen him get like when him and Eric did Talk Heathen, I think I've seen him get upset about people with something that somebody said, and get upset about
it's okay
that.
to be upset, but I mean, but he's a nice guy. Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
The thing about like with Tracy and the wokeness was she was upfront about her wokeness. It wasn't like it was something that was underhanded or they are trying to misdirect you on where you knew where Tracy Harris stood pretty much. Yeah,
I agree with that. She never hit any of that.
When it comes to the definitions of atheism, I feel like that was being hidden. That was being kept from people.
It was.
And that, to me, that really hurts the conversation. And that, I never really had a problem with the atheist experience until even after I started talking with you, Steve, and reading SCP and learning about it. I still never really had a big issue until I heard, well, they're atheists whether they like it or not. And I'm like, well, hold on. Like,
well, why do you think we had so much pushback on that?
Absolutely not true.
But Clint, why do you think that years ago, and Ozzy was one of the primary, he was one of the first on the scene of this. I came in not too long after, but I was not an idiot. I hate to bring it up being a nuke, but one of the things nukes are actually very good at is reading stuff very quickly and able to regurgitate it and understand it. This is the thing that nukes are trained to do. I mean, I'm not even fronting. That is a thing.
You can learn, believe it or not, you can learn to read quickly. If you are a slow reader, you can learn to read faster. If you don't have trouble with like memory, like if somebody tells you a number and you immediately forget it, you can train your brain to be better at that.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to. So these are like learned skills.
And so I'm realizing that, yes, atheist experience is putting out nonsense really quickly. I mean, it didn't take that much to figure out. But, we were trying to explain these things, but they would say, no, look, we're just wrong. We're just wrong. And people are starting reading on their own. Hey, wait a minute here. These are some really cool people that are actually saying what Steve's saying. You got Grandma Oppie out there, who's one of the greatest philosophers of our time. I think he's brilliant. I listened to Stephen Law the other day. There's obviously Alex Malpass. I mean, matter of fact, it's funny. I'm on this academic list where they send papers out every so often, right? And you can download them for free, even though I've got access. But Alex's paper came up the other day. Alex's Malpass paper came up the other day, which is pretty cool. I'm like, I know him.
I know that guy.
Yeah. But what can we wrap it up? My point being is that they hated us. We were the evil. We were the enemy for pointing out, hey, look, maybe if you want to use these terms, that's fine, but you cannot make them categorical. Don't say you must be atheist or theist. That is a categorical statement by necessity. You're making a dichotomous statement out of a semantic argument. I find that to be disingenuous, because then you're trying to impose your views on people that are trying to use more precise terminology like I am. I don't think that's right. I think that's completely dishonest, and they're getting a lot of shit for that nowadays, and so as well they should. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and before I jump off here, I'd like to kind of touch on something Cheshire said about having good conversations and back and forth. Like, it's okay as an atheist to be in a conversation with a theist, or specifically like a Christian or something like that, and be like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me look into that. Let me read up on it. Do you have some sources? And that's one reason I kind of moved away from, what's it called? Dadgummit. Where you just, he has a YouTube channel, and he goes and he just basically asks questions over and over and over again.
Precept?
Are you talking about
Darth Dawkins?
Street epistemology?
No. That is it's a good way. I cannot think of the name of it.
Anthony Magnabosco?
Yeah, Anthony Magnabosco, and whatever it's called when
Street epistemology.
You just street epistemology.
Yeah, Cheshire said that earlier.
I could not think of it. I'm an idiot.
I get that.
But,
I get that. No, you're not. Don't put yourself down.
We brain fart all the time, man.
It has become like my job for when somebody doesn't know what they're trying to think of, that I figure out what it is they're trying.
I do that all the time. I misfire. I'm like, Chesh, help me.
The other day, Steve said like something, and he was like halfway through. He barely even described it. He said, this movie it was like a cyberpunk, and I was like, this one? And he's like, yeah. I don't remember what the
she's good for
was,
something, right? I gotta keep her around for a reason.
But I got really into that after reading the book, How to Make an Atheist, or whatever it is, and it worked for a little while. But then I saw where people were just kind of getting frustrated, and it's because you're not engaging in the conversation. You're not having a conversation.
Yeah,
and it's okay.
It's denialism, is what it is. It's straight up denialism. I don't believe
it's it's useful in some ways, but it's not something that I would recommend doing to your family members.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing is a gateway drug. It's kind of like, again, the Ayn Rand version of objectivism is the gateway thing people get into philosophy sometimes. But once they start learning about it, they go, yeah, this is kind of bullshit. Helios makes a good comment, and I happen to agree with Helios, and people are going to quote mine the shit out of this, but whatever. He says, in my humble opinion, the Church of Satan does a better job to push against the integration of religion and government, which is the main stated goal of atheist experience, whichever one Aaron is in. And I think he's right. I've had conversations with Lucien Greaves. I've had conversations with people from the Church of Satan. And I think by the way, I think the Temple of Satan actually does a better job. But they have a lot of things I agree with. And so it's really weird when people say, well, Steve doesn't want to be associated with atheism because of the stigma of atheism. But here's the thing. I actually agree more with Satanism than I do atheism. So I don't care about the stigma. I don't care about how it works. I care about what people believe and what they're pushing. And I think Helios is right. Yeah. The Church of Satan, or some of the Temple of Satan, Lucien Greaves, who's, by the way, one of the most brilliant guests I've ever interviewed. The guy knows his shit.
Oh, he's articulate. I want to talk to them. Yeah. I want to talk to them so bad.
And we'll get him back on.
Smart about the way that they go about things. It's like,
but see, I believe in secularism, right? And I want a separation of church and state, and I want young earth creationism out of the school. So I do identify more with the Church of Satan, or Temple of Satan, either one, whatever. Satanism has to say than I do with atheism. So when people run this bullshit argument about me, Steve doesn't want the label of atheist because of the stigma. Fuck that! I'd rather be called a Satanist at this point than an atheist. I don't give a shit.
Don't the Satanists just call themselves that just to piss off Christians?
Yes.
Isn't that literally the entire point?
And that's one of the reasons why I won't take the label like that, because I'm not into that thing. But it was basically a huge troll of Christianity. But there's reasons for that. They were trying to point out the problems with Christianity.
I get called a theist all the time now.
Yeah, Satanic Temple. Yeah, Lucien is Satanic Temple. But Lucien Greaves is a very smart guy.
I think there's also like a something to be said for the idea of the friendly atheist, because that's also been kind of like ripped to shreds by people like Hamat, who's running around word policing people to the degree that it's starting to actually harm overseas attempts to help heavily like religious state governments and those people who are unsafe, and it's starting to cause harm in those areas. And so if you're not friendly if you're letting people die, I guess.
Friendly atheism actually was supposed to be that theism can be rational. You're friendly toward theism. That's what friendly atheism is. Now, the Atheist International Alliance, which is Michael Spur, whatever his last name, and John something or other, John Richardson, I think his name is. I get along with John really well, and Michael, I've had engagements with him. But look, I don't agree with his stance on a lot of things, but I support the International Alliance of Atheism as far as what they've been trying to do. Their mission statement, I totally agree with them. Matter of fact, Zara, what's her last name? Zara K. Zara K. They helped her out, because she was in Tanzania, she was in prison. And I was so glad that she got out, and I even told her the other day, hey, look, I may not fully agree, but goodness, you're okay.
These people are so fast to jump on anything that will just rip somebody apart without giving two shits about what the context is going on or what is happening and why, or giving two fucks about how they could screw over something completely separated because it's not actually separated.
That, right?
It's absurd. Yeah. It's over something that is initially completely harmless. There was no victim of whatever went on here, and your hypocritical sensibilities are just so important to you that you are willing to allow the harm of somebody in another country and causing a detriment to them getting out of their situation because you don't like this word that somebody used, even though you have no fucking say. It's
funny is they didn't use the word in any kind of demeaning way. But if I say, look, if I'm in like doing some kind of thing with a reactor plant and I say, because of a restriction in the pipe, the water flow is retarded through the Venturi meter. Is there a harm to somebody? Am I causing harm by using that terminology, which is, by the way, how the word would be used?
It's the same kind of thing where you've got, you can't use white hats and black hats anymore when you're talking about people who hack into video games and break video game code.
Well, or master slave. In the Navy, you also have a master circuit, and then you have the slave circuit that comes out that. They still use it. Eventually, they might get woke too. But now Google, I thought it was Google or Microsoft. One of them says we're no longer using these terms. It's like, oh.
I've said it before, but I'm still wondering how long it'll take before we can't describe something as flame retardant anymore.
Yeah, flame retardant. Yeah. There you go.
It's these people that want to have oppress others and have such a degree of control that over other people's social media or other people's way of communicating, all the while projecting and saying, well, you can't tell me what to say. You can't tell me what words to use. Let me try and get a mob together to go fuck you over. Well, we completely ignore the fact that there are such a things as contracts. A company can't necessarily just fire somebody because they don't like somebody. Same way as somebody might not just be able to leave a company because the company made a tweet they didn't fucking like. Oh my God.
What was the organization?
Hey, well, Tess, you should come to Georgia. They can pretty much fire you for anything.
Yeah, California's at will too. But what was the company that said when no longer you can't say husband, wife, spouse?
Oh, I don't even remember. It's bizarre.
I know Twitter had once had a thing. I'm not kidding. Twitter had a thing.
Canceling has a place. It's important for people who don't have a voice have a platform where that they can speak out against somebody who maybe they wouldn't have been able to speak out before. That is valuable. However, when you're talking about cancel culture to the point of nobody's allowed to say this word anymore despite context, and you're using that to oppress people or to get somebody you don't like out, so you have ulterior motives.
Exactly.
You're the shithead.
Yes, you're the asshole. Yeah. Oh, thank you,
You're
Cole.
the problem.
It's U.S. Congress did that. Thank you. Congress did that. And Twitter did something very similar. Twitter said, they
there's a way to do that. Oh my god.
Twitter said they got rid of like master slave and all that other stuff. And when that first came out, I know it was from Twitter. It was legit. But I was being a little hyperbolic, and I said something like the effect, like this. Is this something from the Onion? That this is so stupid. Is this something from the Onion? And that got 10,000 likes, man.
Yeah, and
so it wasn't like
people,
I was alone in that. Going, Twitter, what the fuck is wrong with you?
It's people that are getting offended for other people that are delegitimizing the people who may or may not be offended, because of course they can't speak for themselves. I have to do it for them. Look at how great I am. And there's a way to go about that. If you want to say, hey, listen, we don't want to use this term anymore. What we're going to propose is say, hey, listen, we don't want to use this term. Here's the term that we think would be more appropriate, and here's why, and explain that. Now, and don't just try and shout people down by being like a fucking mob of pitchforks and torches. Be productive with what you're doing instead of destructive with what you're doing, because you're not helping in that case.
Yeah. Exactly.
Psychos.
Phone calls in the video. It's right there at the bottom. People are asking phone calls, like literally at the bottom. There's a number, yellow.
This is something that I've put a lot of thought into, actually. This is something that when Steve said before that he has issues with people being inconsistent, I think I roll that all into people being intellectually dishonest, and I think that this rolls into that too, is where people like to try to create a world where they would hate to live in. And I mean, they wouldn't want this happening to them.
Why don't they make it a Black Mirror show? Black Mirror should do something on that. It's just like our language gets so retarded, and I don't.
Black Mirror is not allowed to be the name of the show anymore. Use the word black.
And that's what it would be. They have to change their own. It would be a break the fourth wall. And they have to change the name of their own show, because language has become so retarded in that they can't use certain terminology. For me to even say language has been retarded in a way to being slowed down and kind of restricted, in more of a, that one word somebody may find offensive in some other context, not even related to anything that you're saying, because of a hypothetical agent that doesn't exist.
My favorite is that these people do one of two things, right? So they'll say that, listen, you're not allowed to say pick word, because it's inappropriate no matter the context. So they have a choice to make. Either they don't say the word, so they have to be ambiguous about what they're saying, and people are like, what, like the word it, like the knights who say me? Like, is this what you're doing? Or you have to say the word, which means you're breaking the rule because the context doesn't matter. So you're the one being inappropriate and perpetuating that.
Yeah.
Or, like,
don't say anything.
The other thing where people will say the N-word referring to the N-word, right? But it's just as bad as saying the actual N-word, because you're putting that word in the person's head when they hear it. Even when you say the N-word appears in their head.
I try not to touch on that one too much. I have a pet peeve of mine. I don't try and push it on anybody else, which is why I don't bring this up very often. But I do have a pet peeve. If you're speaking about a word, you should, and for some reason you can't say that word while you're trying to have a conversation about the word. If you want to talk about history and the way language has evolved, you should be able to say all of the words, because you are not, you're not perpetuating anything. You're not you're educating.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, but that's up to each individual person.
It's a personal pet peeve. I'm not saying anybody else should be upset by this. It's just a thing that bothers me personally.
Oh no, it frustrates the fuck out of me too. When you're trying to have conversations about that kind of thing.
I'm a very person that lives in the South, so this is a conversation that I have a lot, actually, where people will use the N-word or slurs for homosexuality or the LGBT community, something like that. So when I'm having these conversations with them, I'm like, hey, this is why I don't use the N-word, and I will say the N-word.
Because you're making a point.
I am not comfortable saying it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is why I don't think
I'll give you
right, exactly. I abide by the social expectation. I'm not advocating to not abide by that social expectation. I'm just saying this social expectation irritates me when
I'll give you an example. Go watch
Yeah.
a series called Crash Course Philosophy. Great stuff. And one of the episodes, I've seen them all. I love that series. But one of the ones especially that stood out was exactly what you were saying, Chesh. He was like, "Look, I'm going to be using a word that's going to be offensive, but I'm going to be using it because for education." Now, and the word he used was, I think it was faggot or queer. I don't remember. But faggot to be like a stick of wool, a bundle of sticks, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously queer is actually now acceptable. Back in my day, that was a slur. I don't particularly like using that word. And people say, well, you should use it because it makes it more normative and it helps us out. Look, you can't prescribe uses just like that. Just because I don't particularly use it doesn't mean I'm going to say somebody else can, but you can't force me to use a term that I find to be a slur. I mean, that just makes no sense that you're going to tell me that
that's
I have
why
to use something
I'm not
using.
advocating for any change. Yeah. I don't think that's not up to me. I don't want to tell people that they should or should not use whatever words make them comfortable or uncomfortable. I have no problem abiding by this. I'm not saying, I should be allowed to use it because or in this context or whatever. No. That's not up to me. There are other people that have this discussion. There are other people that this is up to, and I'm more than happy to leave that up to them. That is, I'm totally okay with this. But it irritates me that this is an issue in the first place.
Yeah,
exactly.
If people were shitheads, it wouldn't be an issue.
But I mean, I'm sure you had to read Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer or a lot of those other books in school. There's some pretty, colorful language in those books, right? But
they're important.
Yeah, but they're important reads because of the time period to show that this is what it was like. I mean, you think you could watch Roots and not go, "Hey, this is some pretty shitty stuff." Does this advocating slavery or anything like that? Of course not, right? But it was hard.
Right.
These were horrifying for a reason because they wanted to show you that. Real quick, we got a super chat. Quick. We got to start wrapping this up soon. Somebody wanted to come in, but let's get the super chat out.
5 said some of these atheist organizations would be better served by changing their name to the People's Front of Judea. It describes their sectarianism well.
pretty bold. I don't know, man. Why do they just call like the atheist experience should be like the non-belief experience or the denialism experience? I don't know.
Lack of an experience.
But hey, look, they still have a lot of people that follow them, and I don't care. But I can't stand when people say like, oh, the atheist experience has debunked you. Matt Dillon has debunked you, and I'm like, really? Where did this happen? Because I can guarantee it, and I'll put money on this. He has never once shown my WASP argument to be wrong. I will bet you a considerable amount of money that has never happened.
I could understand an
people
argument.
Aren't even going to read it.
I can
people
understand.
Don't read it when I post it.
Yeah, no, of course they don't. I can understand an argument for like things like Huck Finn because I know people were like, "Oh no, this is getting taken out of schools. No, we're gonna wash this out. We're gonna take it out."
You're gonna whitewash it?
No, well, you can't say white.
But remember the friend.
Fuck's sake.
Got his friend to paint.
I'm so
Here in Georgia,
You can't say white. Okay, you know what you do?
I
tell you what. We're gonna have a rum and coke night, and we're gonna have all the words that you can't use. As soon as somebody says a word, we're gonna find a way to take offense to it. How about that?
Take a shot.
Take a shot. And exactly.
So, take a shot. You're not allowed to
from what country?
Yeah.
You're not. That's the argument. That's the discussion that happens, right? So the thing is like I don't see an argument for removing a sort of like a well-known historical book from circulation. Taking it out of schools, I could kind of see, depending on what you're trying to teach with the book. If there's a better book to replace it, sure. But I could also see we're going to take Huck Finn and we're going to move it up a couple of grades. So like we're no longer going to teach it in 7th grade or 8th grade, and instead we're going to teach it in 10th grade so they have more history, so there's a better understanding of what's going on. We want to use it to teach more things, then that's fine. But just removing education, I think is
of course. I'm all for that. But
there's a conversation to be had, but people won't let you have the fucking conversation.
But nowadays, you have like, there's 6 books from Dr. Seuss that we find offensive now that have been out for how long that are not even in public. They're not even in publication any longer, but they're going to find a way to find offense by it.
Come on.
Well, if you look at the pictures, they are kind of racist.
Well, and that might, but that wasn't his intent, obviously, right? I mean, so intent is the big
No,
thing.
If you look at some of the things Dr. Seuss said himself, he was kind of ashamed of some of the cartoons and images he drew of minorities. So
that might
in
be
my
true,
opinion,
too.
I
Sure.
really don't think he would even care if those books were taken out of.
That's fine, but the whole point is being that they actively are going out to try to find some things to have outrage on. It's not organic anymore, you know.
There's a difference between a publication deciding, hey, these books we don't sell these anymore, so we're going to take them out, or we're going to do a reprint with an update with that author's intention in mind. So it's like we're gonna change these pictures to be more representative, or you're gonna do this, and people are gonna get offended no matter what you do. So
these books aren't being burned; they're not being anything like that. It's just a company and the family has decided, hey, we don't want to promote this anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
And as Ash Scott points out, yes.
That happened.
Again,
we talked about that last week.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about chess.
Did that really happen?
Yeah, it really happened. They took down his channel because they were talking about attacking and defending and the color black and white and chess moves and and obviously when you're talking about chess move, you're like, okay, pawn, rook to 4, whatever, and so the algorithm picked that up as offensive content. Now that's more likely on a bigger channel for some reason. But if the algorithm picks up on this one, I have to go have somebody manually view it and go, look, we're not talking about what you think we're talking about. We're talking about chess and an example of chess. Say chess a few times so the algorithm knows it's chess now because I think they fixed that shit. But
I'm starting a new petition. I want all the Crayola crayons and all the colors of the rainbow renamed to be less offensive. No more black, white, yellow,
blue,
brown.
There's no black
red.
and white or brown in the rainbow.
No, in Crayola crayons there is.
You know what I've noticed is this.
No, listen, we don't have to. The green ones taste the best.
It's not even minorities that are being outraged. It is like white Anglo-Saxon, Karens and things of that nature, privileged people that are being offended on behalf of them, which I find to be the most outrageous thing myself. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. There's no limit who can call in. Somebody's trying to call in.
No, that's the funniest thing I've seen so far. This person clearly doesn't know what's going on. And it makes me happy because they think that there's like a queue line. And
there's no queue line. You just
works.
call in. Yeah.
You just call in. There's nobody waiting to get in.
Yeah.
The limit is 10.
Yeah, I can handle 10 lines at a time. So I've got 4 people in here now. So you got plenty of room.
Man, y'all are awesome. I got to go back to work, but I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation, take my call. Hopefully, I can call in again another time.
I appreciate it, man. Like I said, I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah,
it means a lot.
Thanks for taking time out of your workday.
It means a lot that we know that people have listened and they've gained something out of it, because that's the whole thing that we want to do. We want people to be better at these discussions, and the proof is in the pudding. I've seen people get better in these discussions by taking on board things that we've offered to them. And most of the time they're like, we've never even heard of this shit before. This is cool. I want to learn more about this. So
that was me. I never heard about it. And then I saw your post and talked to other people, and then I asked you for sources and you sent them to me. And I'm more educated and I can have a better conversation with people.
Yeah.
And it's the people that you care about, right?
Yeah, and Ash says that there's Google moderators in the stream right now. I don't know how that works. I don't know if I've heard instances of people like actively listen to the live streams to see what's going on. I've had other creators tell me as well. I've never had it happen that I'm aware of in my feeds. But of course, people should be able to listen anytime and recognize from the context of the discussion what is going on. Obviously, a human element has to be had, because the algorithms are not going to be able to interpret the context of the type of dialogues that we have, because we talk about very complicated type things. So,
yeah,
but I don't know.
Have a good day. We gotta let you go. We gotta let them go.
Yeah, I think Glenn, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just say, because I sent Steve multiple messages like, hey, when are you going to have a call-in show? And then he has like 18 of them, and I never call in because I'm working. And then I got a little break at this one, so I was like, all right, I got to call in now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, man.
All right, thanks. Y'all have a good one.
Have a good day. Free to Play said, "Did you hear about playing cards that replace kings, queens with gold, silver, and bronze? Cause patriarchy." And a woman decided the king being able to beat the queen is sexist.
Yeah.
And I was like, does that apply to chess? Because the queen is OP. Hashtag nerf the queen.
Yeah,
but
well, in chess, queen is
hand,
queen is the best piece.
I mean, I guess removing it is fine, but how fragile do you need to be that you feel attacked by a deck of playing cards? We're not Gambit over here. We're not Twisted Fate from League of Legends. I think you'll be fine.
There are color decks. There's blue, green, yellow.
Will the king card, if the king card is hurled at you and you're a female, will it do more damage?
Do you know there's actually do you know what there's actually a fifth suit? Did you know that, Josh? Yeah, there's a fifth suit. There's a couple different ones. One of them is Star. One of them is what was it? One of them is Star, like your hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades, and then the Star. But there's a couple. There was a lot of games that actually, I guess, use 5 different suits. Now I think that'd be really complicated. Pinnacle is one of the games that uses 2 decks, but there's a special Pinnacle deck. I don't know if you ever play Pinnacle, but anyways,
coins?
What's that? I played Pinnacle.
Was coins ago. Or Garen was a suit?
I don't know. There's Eagle was one. I remember. Star was one, but there was a whole bunch of different things for like a fifth suit for certain games. But
I like the idea that when a king card is thrown at a woman, it's a guaranteed crit.
It's a guaranteed crit. It's a natural 20. Roll die.
Steve, though, I wanted to remind you of something.
Sure.
This is why nobody ever wants to talk to you.
Probably. Yeah, according from what we understand, nobody ever wants to talk to us yet. We're now a half hour, 45 minutes overtime because people want to call. But according to some other people, nobody ever wants to talk to us.
I don't know what is a stronger example of projection than that stream and that going off the way it did, like that quote specifically going off the way it was. Because that person didn't want to talk to us because they didn't like where they were forced the conversation to go. They didn't want to talk to us. Therefore, nobody wants to talk to us.
Oh, I'm sure they've got some backlash since then.
Which stream was this? Because I must have missed it.
Dude, yeah.
It didn't go,
wasn't it?
It didn't go very well.
I disagree.
I would have liked things to be different, but I'm just like, I was just mortified that he just wasn't understanding stuff and then trying to turn it back on us, and then he went, full throttle, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute here.
He demanded a dumpster fire, and
he was looking for a
definitely
dumpster
could have
fire.
gone better. Yeah, it definitely could have gone better from a productive. Well, I guess it was productive in a way too. It could have gone more positively between all three of us, I guess, is probably how I would put it.
I would have done things different knowing what I know now, probably. Hindsight's 20/20, but I mean, come on.
We would have been in a whole different...
Have you ever been in a debate?
Have you ever been in a debate, though?
I can't at that point.
Have you ever been in a debate, though? I mean, if you enjoy a dumpster fire and you enjoy some cringe, I definitely recommend watching that. It is a lesson in a couple of different things, and I'm sure you'll be able to point it out. In fact, you leave a comment on that video, and you let me know what lesson you learned.
His fandom came over, and they're all like trying to blame us.
My lesson was don't at me.
And I'm like, okay, can you explain where we're wrong? And none of them, not one of them could explain how he was right and we were wrong in any way. Not one of them could. Yet by fiat, we were not the cordial host that we should have been. I'm like, wait a minute. He's literally being sexist to my co-host in real time, and I have to be cordial. I don't know about this.
I have a question about that. I don't remember this at all. I am completely in the dark. I don't remember at all about this. But was there any point where any apologies were demanded either way?
No, that's not from we didn't demand any apologies.
Did he demand any apologies from you guys?
Don't think so.
Okay, good.
Now his people had came over and said, "Oh, you guys should apologize to David." And we're like, "Are you kidding me? No, hell no."
But when you're involved in a dumpster fire, You should look for reasons and ways you can maybe apologize, but don't ever demand for an apology ever. That's a lesson for everybody out there.
And
never do that.
You can ask.
By the way,
you can come to somebody and say, "Hey, you've upset me, and here's why I'm upset. Can we talk about this?" Blah 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 blah.
By the way, somebody had asked. Somebody said, Roxy said, Cheshire, you mind if I ask your age? Was that offensive? Here's the rule here. You can ask anything you want about the host. As a matter of fact, it's almost mandatory that you must say something about the looks of the host at least once per show. Unlike other shows where they sit there and they say, I love that they spam it. Personal things about the host are not, don't say anything personal things. Even if you say, hey, look, I like the way you did your hair today. That's offensive to them. No, on this program, we not only appreciate it, we expect it, and we make our mods do it every so often just to reinforce our egos.
Yeah, but if you're asking me, you have to form your question in the form of a compliment.
Yeah.
To be fair, I did spend a whole stream yesterday calling somebody fat. Make a point.
Speaking of which, your hair looks so good that I just want to start licking it, Steve.
Licking it, Steve?
I was wondering if that's where that was going.
Yeah.
Do you want to frolic through my hair?
I figured where he was going, but I got really distracted by the licking part.
By the way, one of the downsides of having longer hair is that have you like you must have it happen. You actually like you're eating something, all of a sudden you realize you got a piece of hair in there and you don't want to break it, so you're like trying to
You're trying to get like a food off of it while you're doing it.
At my age, I'm like I got to keep every strand I got, so I'm like, I'm saving that puppy. I'm like that's not nope.
I wouldn't know. My hair has never been longer than 3 inches.
Oh, fair enough.
But it is
I don't
true though.
have long hair.
If you go,
I want to give people cat baths.
If you go watch shows like that are by the Atheist Experience, or I don't know what they call them now, but they're like, please don't comment on the looks of the host, and we're like thinking, go for it. You want to make fun of me? You want to say I'm ugly? You want to say I'm cute? You want to diss me? That stuff doesn't bother me. It's other shit that is offensive to me. That superficial shit, I don't give a crap about. You start, saying negative things about people I care about in a visceral kind of way. That's when they're blocked. It's the rules of engagement kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. And so like you don't get blocked here for disagreeing. You don't get blocked here for being like maybe like trolly and jokey. You don't get blocked
people tell me, hey
for...
Steve, you look fat. I'm like, okay, I don't know how.
Yeah, you don't get
been
blocked
on a diet,
for
and I haven't released my photos yet, but Cheshire, I'm not looking too bad after my
yeah, there you go. Barjass and the hobo. Which one's which? Steve, are you the Barjass or are you the hobo?
I don't know the difference. What is that?
They said Barjass and the hobo, meaning me and you, I assume.
That's a grip.
Who's the hobo and who's the Barjass?
I'm sorry. I'm just slow on my
Chris Foster for $4.99. Chris Foster for $4.99 said, I used to have a glorious beard, and that was always a problem. Hence why I no longer have a beard worthy of Valhalla.
Oh, dude, Chris, one of the most visceral photos I've ever seen, where I could just feel the guy's pain, and I'm sure you've seen it, is where the guy had this majestic long beard. And I tried growing a beard, it didn't work for me. I tried the goatee, it didn't work for me. But this guy had a majestic beard. And he caught it in a sand grinder thingy, one of those grinding wheels, and it just tore like half the beard right off.
Oh.
And he took a picture of it, and you could just feel. I mean, one, it had to hurt like hell, but he must have grown that beard for like 4 fucking years.
Like a year ago, I think Steve used to have like a beard, like a longer one. Now he's got like the goatee going on, right? And so when he had the beard, people called him Gandalf a lot, and that's when my sister met him. And he shaved it off all the way, and I showed the picture to my sister, and she was like, "Bring Gandalf back." She's like, "No."
I adore your sister, but I'm gonna have to disagree with her on this. I prefer it like that.
I think she's fine with the goatee. It was like a bear.
Oh
like
yeah, no, I agree
face.
with that. No, I don't like the bear either. And so yeah, I'm not ever gonna do that.
The goatee's good. I like the goatee.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely won't do that again. But yeah, I don't like the itchy scratchy, and it just didn't work. It doesn't work. Maybe it's funny because I remember Kyle was on Unirock one time spewing his nonsense, and one of the things he had said was something I had said taken completely out of context. Go figure. But he was trying to run this weird narrative that Steve didn't want to shave his beard because he wanted to look smarter than he really was, and because he didn't think he was that smart, and I'm like, that's not. No, I was like, I was trying to go for an image of just like, kind of the appearance of this old, wise, godly type guy. That's it. That was all I kind of said to him, and all of a sudden that turned into, Steve didn't want to shave it because he was a narcissist, and he wanted to appear to be smart, and I'm like, you got all that from what I said. That you're working overtime there, Kyle. Anyways, we have one last caller.
Must thou protest too much?
Hamlet. I don't remember the scene. Anyways, we got a last caller. Hello.
Hello.
Hola. Okay, guess not. Some people can't figure out how to work it. I know it's weird how it's called in. It's not.
Sometimes on phones it's weird too.
There we go. There we go.
Hello.
You got it?
Okay.
You're breaking.
Let me keep my earphones off because I don't know what it is with this Talkatone app.
Yeah, no problem.
Just hold on a sec.
Sure. We got 5 minutes. I want to keep this under 3 hours. We're way over than we usually.
We're only an hour over time.
Yeah, we're an hour over time.
Hello.
Yes.
You said yes. I'm able to be heard.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, let me just raise up the volume here.
So who is this?
I feel like we're gonna get yelled
atheists,
at.
right?
Uh-oh.
Who's this?
So you guys are atheists, right?
I'm
No,
not.
only one of us is an atheist.
Oh, what's the other one?
Agnostic.
Agnostic, you said?
Yes, sir. First of all, what's your name?
Okay, well, that's the same thing. You
Well,
both
hey,
deny God's existence, so.
Well, no.
Who
denial,
is this?
What's your name, first of all?
Yeah, Catholic traditionalist.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay.
You could just call me CT.
Yeah, I thought it was CT. So a denial is when you say that something's false. A denial is the assertion that the proposition's false. I don't do that. She does.
Oh, now you're the agnostic. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I don't deny God's existence. I just don't have a belief that God does or does not exist. She actually denies God's existence.
Oh, so you agree with me then that God is necessary for all that is, all that you perceive to exist, right?
That's a bit of a jump.
Not only a bit of a jump, it's A to Z with missing a bunch in between.
I'll jump in here. He's not even wrong.
Yeah, that's kind of fractally incorrect. I don't
still
know
waiting for
how you got that
I didn't get an answer to my question yet. So can I get an answer to my question?
The answer would be no. That is not correct.
Well, what's not correct?
That I believe God is fundamental or necessary for existence or anything.
Right. So that's an implicit denial of God.
No,
so
it's not an implicit denial of God. Again, listen, hang on.
Let me explain why. I'm not finished speaking. Let me explain why.
Oh, okay.
Because if God, by definition, the God of Christianity, that is responsible for all facts, then for you to claim that you don't believe a God is necessary for all facts, and then that would mean that God cannot exist in a world whereby there's even one fact that is not does not come about from that God. So it's an implicit denial of God. So you're both in the same category, you the atheist and you the agnostic. It's not a neutral position that you're holding as an agnostic. You're denying God's existence.
So two things. This is exactly, I'm just going to address something that we were talking about before we move on to what you said. This is the difference between trying to have every conversation be an argument or a debate versus having a discussion about what your position is, what the other person's decision is, and why you want to know, and to further the conversation. This is going to be contradiction. This is going to be rejection and not refutation. Now, to move on to what you said, every position has a burden of proof. every position has that. Agnostic is not entirely a neutral position. It is still a position that has its own justification, at least not from what I'm interpreting what you're saying. You seem to be interpreting agnostic or that Steve is suggesting that agnosticism does not have any kind of burden of justification because he's saying, well, I don't believe either of you. I don't have to weigh in on this. No, he still has a burden of justification, and I'm sure he can posit that to you and explain it to you if you would like, but...
Yeah, and by the way, this isn't the Atheist Experience, so we have a wholly different format than them. We actually try to have discussions.
You don't have to.
You don't have to become
okay.
argumentative. It's not going to be
chill out.
It's
good.
Fine. So as far as God being a necessary component for like facts and everything, that's just something that somebody posits as a presupposition. We all have presuppositions. That's not one of my presuppositions. I do not think at all that you're required to have a God to have some kind of material facts that exist ontologically. We can ground it in many other metaphysical things that are possible why the universe exists. What they may be, we may not know, or may not have a metaphysical necessity. It could be a brute fact, the contingent things going back to other contingencies, or it could just be an infinite regress. Who the hell knows? But there's nothing that makes it obligatory that a God must exist for facts to exist or anything contingent to exist. That merely is a theist presupposition. And presupposition is assumed axiomatically, right? That's why they're presuppositions. So you cannot make a definitive statement from a presupposition that if I don't accept your presupposition, that I'm denying it.
So when you make a claim that you said there's no reason why there would have to be a God for all to exist, do you know that 100% for a fact to be true?
I recognize it to be the case based upon the fact that you can have two other things. So it would be a fact that is not necessary because you can have, again, a brute fact, which is a contingent brute fact, or you can have an infinite regress that doesn't, either one of them do not require a deity, correct? Yeah, a deity, if you posit a deity...
You didn't answer my question. You said, and I'm simply repeating back to you, listen to me, you said, and I'm simply repeating your words back to you, you said that there is no reason for there to be a God for all things to exist. So my question to you was, do you know that 100% for a fact to be true? You either do or you don't.
I do know for a fact. Well, hang on. I do know for a fact that a God is not necessary based upon the fact there are two other possibilities, a brute fact or a infinite regress. Do you agree that the universe could be just a brute fact that everything contingent, everything that exists from a contingent brute fact rather than a metaphysical necessity? Is that possible?
No, that's not possible.
Well, okay, wait. How is that not possible when that is the three three arguments?
I can explain to you. Sure, I can explain.
Well, let me finish. Those are the three things possible.
In fact, I could get you. In fact, do you want me to answer? You asked me a question and you don't want me to answer?
I didn't finish the question. You interrupted me mid-sentence.
Why don't you be quiet and let me answer the damn question?
Because
first of all, I will mute you. I will do this. I will hit this mute button. Oh, you can't see it. Damn it. I'll do the whole Matt Dillon.
To answer a question, you have to let somebody finish the question.
So in order to answer a question, you have to be able to understand the question when somebody finishes with the question. So my question is,
you're at like a 10, and the rest of us are at like a 2.
Yeah. My question is, part of the argument from contingency posits three possibilities. If the universe exists now, it has an infinite regression to the past, okay, which would be an absolute some kind of infinity towards the past. That is one possibility of the argument from contingency. The second one is that it goes to something that is a brute fact. Neither of them would satisfy principle sufficient reason, but both of them are possible. The third one is a metaphysical necessity, which is another possibility. You're now claiming that the only thing is possible is a metaphysical necessity, negating the contingency and the infinite regress. What is your justification for that? There's my question.
Can I get the super chat in before you answer real quick? I'm just going to get the super chat so we can make sure that it doesn't, because I don't know how long your answer is going to be. I just want to get this in quick before it's gone. Godless Comer for 5 says, nice cover version of Darth Dawkins' greatest hits going on here.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
This is easy mode. This is Darth Dawkins port 2.0. Go ahead. You're free on the floor.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you guys are afraid to speak to Darth Dawkins, just like Matt Dillon is afraid to speak
really?
to him. That's because he refutes you guys.
How far back do you think I go with Darth Dawkins? Darth Dawkins has
pretty
never
sure
been,
Steve invited him on the other day.
Darth has never been blocked from this channel. He's never been on it. Back in the day,
Darth and I had many discussions of me showing him his incorrect understanding of various things. He got biological facts wrong. His precept was ridiculous. He actually argued at one time, and I'm not even fronting, you can look this up, on Darwin's Greatest Hits. He actually argued that affirming the consequent was a logical rule of inference. And so I have had many conversations with Darth. I'm not scared to talk to Darth. He's scared to talk to me. But you keep wanting people to go onto your server to talk to Darth.
No need to continue monologuing. You asked me a question. Do you want to hear my answer?
Well, yeah,
now?
but you just threw something completely unrelated out. But go ahead.
Okay,
by all
so
means.
the thing is, you're claiming
so well
there's two
here.
other possibilities other than God, correct?
I don't know. I want to go back to talking about how Darth Dawkins doesn't want to show up here. Can we go back to talking about that?
Go get him. Bring him over.
Yeah,
you know
want us to talk to him.
He's
Why
on
are
your
you
Discord
here?
all the time,
Tell him
right?
to
So
here.
you guys pose a question to me. This shows that you're dishonest. You pose a question to me, and now you want to go.
You changed it to
something completely different.
That's not
true.
Hold on,
you
just a
don't
second.
want me to answer
hold
the
on,
question.
no, hold on. You stop.
I'm
You
so
stop.
happy.
You want to talk about dishonesty, okay? You have zero charity for anybody in here. You want to come in here and be a
Okay, look,
Christian,
I'm
and you want to
gonna
be
give you
no.
guys
Yo,
20
mute this guy.
seconds
Can you
to allow
mute
me
this
to
guy
answer
real
the
quick?
question.
I don't want to
Give this guy 20 seconds.
Then I'm out of here.
Shh, quiet time.
Steve, let Mr.
fuck this
Serious
guy.
Go
go.
ahead first, and then yeah. Well, you don't get
I
the
am
floor
over
yet.
it.
Mr. Serious, go ahead and finish. But we
now
recognize
have
that
10
he
seconds.
did change from the answering the question. He decided to talk
he's
about Dark
threatening us.
instead. So
He's threatening us.
5,
Threatening me with
4,
what?
3, 2, 1.
Go ahead. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
When, cry baby, when, from your river.
I have a question. I have a question. If this guy's whole spiel is that he wants to copy what somebody else is doing and not do as good of a job, and then demands that we talk to this other person, why is he complaining that we're telling him to go get that other person
Right.
instead of wasting our time?
That's what I said. Go get Darth. Have him come
also,
in. Oh, good
I
Lord.
have
He did not last very long.
Yeah, that was.
I have evidence that proves that infinite regress is possible. Just look at Darth Dawkins' internet presence.
You know, it's funny. Here's the funniest part. Okay, let's be serious for a second. If he had any understanding of these topics, he would have actually been able to say something like, okay, well, infinite regress isn't possible. And he would have ran something like the Grim Reaper paradox, right? Or the Bell's paradox, where they Oppie or I can't remember his name, would run the paradox. And I'm not going to get into the Grim Reaper paradox because it's kind of complicated. But that would have been, those are arguments against an infinite causal thing for the time regression, right? For causality in the back, in this direction. And so there are arguments to be had about that. You're dealing with actual infinities. But that clearly was above his level and pay grade to talk about those arguments, because there are arguments to be had about that. Now, I know how to defeat the Grim Reaper paradox, but whatever.
There's like 3 different things that went on there. It was like a matter of a little bit of gish galloping, and it was a matter of also like I'm going to impose this 100% thing onto you as if it's any kind of defeater, even though it's completely unrelated. Ash Scott makes a really good point, and then I want to get to Mr. Serious and our new caller.
Yeah.
Ash Scott said, "See, this is what the real Jesus would have sounded like if he had existed."
Well, and it's funny because knowledge doesn't even require 100%, but when we're talking about 100% in a system, like, and I use the example all the time, if you have
what was the clock on that? We've got a clock above us, right? How long was that?
Too damn
Somebody
long.
check that.
If you have 2 entangled particles, right, and you know the spin of one is up, the other one's going to be 180 degrees opposite. So you know the spin of one, you automatically know the spin of another one with 100% certainty, right? So and within that system, you have some certainty, but we're not talking about Descartes' epistemic type certainty. And so people like pre-suppers love to throw that word around, certainty, and it has different senses, right? So I can use the word certainty in a certain sense. Like, I am certain A equals A. It is a metaphysical necessity. I cannot be wrong about that. I can use certain things like, yes, I know there could be other things other than metaphysical necessity because I understand there could be brute fact or an infinite regress. So that's what I'm saying. This is when pre-suppers lose their script. That's what happens. You just witnessed what happens when somebody who actually can get them off their script, they get all triggered. And that's just how Darth Dawkins has always operated.
Well, and there's atheists are doing the same thing, too, on Twitter, the lack-theists.
Yeah. But
anyway.
Was I not able to answer his questions? I thought I did okay.
I think you did fine. This was my issue.
He didn't even really propose a question.
No.
He did.
He tried to turn a question into a statement like halfway through.
And I think he knew it was outmatched. And he was like, "Oh shit." Steve's not a white belt. Oh my god.
I want to hear what Mr. Serious has to say.
Go ahead, Mr. Serious.
as soon as he started, like I started like my eye started twitching. Like as soon as he started, like he was like, "Oh, what do you guys? You guys deny God?" And you're like, "No, Steve doesn't." Oh yeah, he's like, "Oh yeah, he totally does." I'm like, "Oh my fucking God."
That dude came in at my favorite.
Theist and atheist both hate me for the same because I'm an enigma.
My favorite thing about this is twofold. One, he was in the chat claiming that we weren't letting theists in, and then it took him like, I guess maybe he was waiting for us to end without bringing anybody in, and then decided to come in anyway.
It's not one per call. You could call in a whole bunch of people on the line right now. Go ahead, it's party line.
So he started off from the chat with like an accusation that made no sense whatsoever, and then came in here at like a level fucking 10 where we're all talking about discussion and communication and not debate, and he's just so
I would have loved for
mad.
him to say, "Hey, I've been trying to call, but your call screener won't let me in."
And oh
my
yeah,
God.
I love that.
That would have been so funny. So who's
epic.
that would have been good. Who's our other person in here? Hello.
Yeah, real quick before I get to them, I just want to say this. Ozzy says, pre-suppers confuse certainty, confidence with a proposition, with something being certitude, cognitive term for being true. Yes, absolutely. They conflate a whole bunch of things like that. So go ahead, new caller. Who we got?
Jamie.
Jamie, what's up, Jamie? Yeah, buddy.
Hey. It's
By the way, I
funny
won't hold him Catholic. What's his name against you? By the way, as one of yours.
CT.
Yeah, I won't hold CT against you, even though he's one of yours.
Oh yeah. Well, I disagree with what he's saying because it's kind of funny because yesterday I got on a stream and he popped in. I've never talked to Darth Dawkins before, but I was like kind of shocked. It's kind of funny, but he started off. He took over the whole thing, of course, and he was explaining exactly what that guy was just saying, and I was thinking, I don't think that's right. I don't think there's two positions. I think, obviously there's an agnostic position, and something you were saying about the three positions or whatever. Seemed to me like when I was thinking about it yesterday, I'm not really versed on the like there's just three possibilities, but my thought was that it was, well, there's an infinite regress is a possibility, or you could have a non-contingent source
brute fact,
of all
exactly.
contingent things,
yes.
and then that could be personal or not. Is that wrong?
No, that's exactly my point to him. And like I said,
saying?
he didn't know how
Okay.
to out-argue those things. I guess he never heard of the Grim Reaper paradox, right? Because that would have been an argument people come up with for the infinite regress problem.
There's a tactic, right? He came in here swinging, expecting us to just either back off or to let him dominate whatever the conversation was and answer. And basically is like, no, you need to answer for what I'm saying. And it's like, you do not understand who you're talking to.
I thought we're in the atheist experience where we actually just say, we don't believe you. Oh, no, we're going to tell you why you're fucking wrong.
Well, that's what I told Darth Dawkins. I said, well, let's say somebody says, I don't think an infinite regress is possible, which I don't think really makes a lot of sense either. But what if they say it's a non-contingent source, but they're not convinced it's personal, or they don't think it's personal?
Yeah, that's fine.
So then what?
Here's the thing. The problem with the infinite
You're off
regress...
script and it's gone. He's going to get mad.
The problem with infinite regress is this. There is good reasons to think there probably isn't an actual infinity that exists in ontologically speaking. And there's good reason to think that time is not some continuous linear thing, that there is discrete values that exist, which does kind of put a damper in the entire infinite regress and the Grim Reaper paradox. So there's good reasons to think that it's a bunch of disconnected events, but happening so quickly they appear to be linear, right? They appear to be no discontinuities.
They're just trying to take advantage of people who are not educated in the topic without educating themselves at a topic. They think, hey, this is a hole that a lot of people don't understand or don't know about, partially probably because of things like the atheist experience, not educating people in that way and setting them up for failure in that case, and bullying them into thinking that they're wrong. Yeah. And so it's like you might not intuitively be able to know how to deal with that, but you might intuitively recognize that it's fallacious, right? But you might not be able to explain it. So, but if you can't explain it, you have a hard time dealing with somebody coming in sideways as hell like that. And like, look at this show. Look at how this conversation has been going. Look at any of our previous shows. This is not the way we conduct ourselves.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
like, clearly this person doesn't know what the hell.
Yeah, I think he's calling it the wrong show, kind of thing. I think they banned him at Atheist Experience. But to finish your point real quick, there's good reason to think that anarchical infinity doesn't exist. That's why they say infinite regress is probably not the case. But as far as a brute fact. Yeah, look, I think that we are so limited on our ability to understand reality that I take it as a brute fact that exists. Probably, I don't even know what it would be other than a brute fact. Sure, could a metaphysical necessity exist?
God.
Absolutely. Well, that's not a brute fact though, because a brute fact would not be God.
Oh, right.
A brute fact would be metaphysical necessity because it has to exist in all possible worlds. Contingent thing can only exist in more than one, and not in all.
I don't understand why there's this catch-all of if you don't know for 100%, it has anything to knowledge has anything to do with your belief, and so it's why do you know that 100% for a fact? And you can just turn that around and say, do you know God exists for 100% of a fact? And it's your God, and it's like it's about knowledge. You can believe it, and they'll say, well, I believe it is, and it's like. Great.
Well, what do they mean by
that? Doesn't tell me. That doesn't answer the question.
They're so vague on the the difference between certainty and certitude. But they are so vague on what they mean by certain. If look, quantum mechanics is quantified, right? 0, 1, 1, 0, right? They're quantified. Spin up, spin down. So if you are not certain, what else would you be? If I say, look, I know this is spin up, but I'm not quite certain this would spin down. That wouldn't make any sense in quantum mechanics because you have to be certain. There's no other possibilities. 0, 1. If this is 0, this was 1. This is up, this is down. That's how quantum mechanics works. So if you can't be certain about that, then what do they mean about certainty? I don't know.
What bothers me about like that CT guy and people like them is they're not even interested in what our positions are, and you can tell that right off the bat when they say, "Oh, because you didn't give me a yes, that means a no."
And I was trying to explain to him, right?
Ignoring all of the grey in between the black and the white. Oh no, I said black and white.
Ozzy hits the nail on the head. Oh, good.
It's like just because you don't give them a yes or a no answer does not mean you are affirming the opposite. Like there is everything else in between, such as agnosticism or just completely unsure. Maybe you're leaning one way or another, but you're not entirely convinced yet on either proposition.
But those would require nuances in the discussion, right? That they're not capable of having. These people
frustrate the fuck out of me because they are clearly not interested in what our positions are or what we think or how we got there. They only care about their position and trying to force their views on everybody else. Fuck
I'm curious because apparently Darth wants to come in so badly that he had to send this little copycat. When does he get in trouble for plagiarism, by the way?
CT has a server that Darth Dawkins, he has to go there.
I'm not talking about that. I want to know how long we have to keep this hangout going and this call open so he can come in, since he wants to come in so badly, apparently.
CT has been trying to get me to go to his Discord to talk to Darth.
We don't play fucking second fiddle, motherfucker. He can come in directly. We're not going to deal with his peons.
Darth won't go anywhere he doesn't have mod control. But anyways, Ozzy says he's right.
Well, he did yesterday.
Yeah, I guess he has been. He's been stepping out because nobody's going to him, so he has to find fresh meat for him. Well, but Ozzy says Cheshire is right about about DD and Psi. They exploit people's ignorance of philosophy and then stump them with philosophy 101 questions. Then they declare their theology is triumphant, and that is absolutely correct. Ozzy's right on point. Chester's right on point. They do that. But then they meet people like us and go, oh, shit, maybe we can't bamboozle them with philosophy 101 shit. And then they don't want to stick around for the answers because Rez pointed out they're not interested in the answers. They're not interested in the dialogue. They're playing a game of gotcha. And when they don't get that gotcha, they flip out and they do the whole, oh, I'm taking my toys and leaving thing. It's part of the precept script. It's mandatory for them to do that, Elvis.
Not all
you answer their question without a yes or no, and then they say, oh, you didn't answer the question, though. It's like, Were you fucking listening, motherfucker?
Yeah. By the way, I did listen a little bit to DD and Randolph Richardson, and I'm just gonna throw this out there, and you can take it for what it's worth. Randolph Richardson is dumber than Darth Dawkins. Darth Dawkins at least has a lot of practice in his belt. He is dumb, but he knows how to be a masterful sophist in using philosophy as a weapon. Randolph Richardson is just incompetent, beyond incompetent. Matter of fact, I just recently watched something that Answers and Reasons did on Randolph Richardson, and they caught the same mistakes that I had caught on his page. And I think they watched my stuff first, which is fine. I mean, it's whatever. But I mean,
I don't know. I think they said that you did it at the same time they did.
Which is whatever. But I mean, it's just we all notice these kinds of things, and they're like, this guy has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. So. Yeah, Randolph Richardson is completely inept, and Darth Dawkins would run circles around him because of that.
This guy who had come in, I just want to say that I understand that he is like a very bad example for people who do precept, and he's probably a very bad example of people who, like, I guess, believe in God or, believe in Jesus, or like, what would Jesus do? He was an absolute, like, schoolyard bully. He wanted to come in and just push people around, and when it wasn't working, he was just, plugging his ears, la la la, do what I want. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm out.
That is the definition. That is the definition of somebody who demands a dumpster fire. That is like, I'm here to cause a dumpster fire, though it is nice when it cleans itself up and takes itself out.
Very true. Yeah. He came in as dishonest as fuck. Like, he was awful. He was absolutely awful. He had no nuance at all. He didn't give a crap about having a conversation or learning anything about Steve or Chesh. He just wanted to push a narrative, and that's all that he wanted to do. And then he had the fucking nerve to say you guys were being dishonest, and then I couldn't fucking take it.
He's probably got DD's rhetoric memorized, and he probably wanted to spiel the whole thing out.
I've got a precept script that I'll try on some white belts. Okay, good luck with that.
He just plagiarizes. It's just plagiarism at that point.
It's so funny.
I don't think he's necessarily dishonest.
If he wanted to really fuck with people, why did he memorize my arguments and go run my arguments? He'll have more fun.
To be fair, that would be more fun, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least my arguments are righteous, and they're logical, and they're valid, and they're sound.
You have to wonder, like, do these people just prefer to have, like, quote-unquote reality told to them and just, like, not have a single original thought for themselves?
Probably.
Because it's easier that way?
Yeah. And Ozzy makes another good point. Back in the day, anti-theism, which is Randolph Richardson doesn't know fuck all what he's talking about when it comes to anti-theism and axiology whatsoever. When I'm saying he's inept, I mean straight up, he is literally inept in these topics. But if you want to talk about anti-theism, I think Christopher Hitchens was a good example of what an anti-theist would be. And yes, he didn't use the greatest arguments sometimes, but he was witty. He had good rapport. Him and Stephen Fry's debate was one of the best debates I've ever seen in my entire life against the Catholic, whoever the Catholic persons were. I don't remember their names. That's how bad they did. But it was on a topic called "Is the Catholic Church a Force for Good?" It was a brilliant video and debate. But that's what an anti-theist was, right? And still is.
There's the thing is like there's a difference between like what a lot of people go around doing on Twitter, whether they're atheists or whether they're theists, going around and conflating the argumentation between whether or not there's a God and arguing about religion. You can be anti-theist, like anti-religion, anti-theist, and be a theist.
Absolutely, I've known some. Yes,
I know people who hate a lot of organized religion who are theists, and this is like it.
It's not even just Christians that are like that. There's Wiccans would be. I know Wiccans are anti-theists. They're like, we don't want religion. Religion sucks.
Someone pointed out in the chat.
Nightmare. Yeah.
Someone pointed out in the chat earlier that like if you're like a fundamentalist like Christian, you're actually supposed to be an anti-theist because you're supposed to be for the separation of church and state. You're supposed to be for like being against like this whole sort of organization that religion has become, because that's not what religion was supposed to, like that religion was supposed to be. Like, it's become antithetical to what it was supposed to be in the first place.
Well, they do want
if you're talking about
theocracy,
Christians,
but they only want a theocracy when Jesus comes
For
back,
them.
right? For them, their type of theocracy is Jesus is the head of the government, right? So Jesus, and I don't mean to like symbolically. I mean he has come back down, he has taken charge, and he is in charge of the entire world. That's the theocracy they want. So they don't want. A lot of theists don't want anything other than that. They want separation of church and state until that happens.
there's a big difference between what somebody like that is doing, who's basically like anti anybody who's not me, and then people who are anti-theist.
Yeah.
And then there's also a difference between atheism. And so you can be an atheist and be for organized religion of some kind, and there's a nuance to what kind that may be. Some things you might be okay with, some things you might not be okay with, and there's a discussion to be had there. And it would be far more productive if atheists spent, maybe, especially when it comes to politics, it might be a lot more productive if they have that kind of a conversation instead of yelling at people about a God belief, which has nothing to do with somebody's politics. It can inform their politics.
It's more interesting.
But if you make a good argumentation, it's not attached to them in the same way. They could say like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm against organized religion doing this, or this, and so I don't want this, and this. And then you're going to have a far stronger, far larger, far wider reach than you would if you're just like, nope, God doesn't exist.
Yeah, and anti-theism.
Prove me wrong.
Anti-theism is understood.
In my mind.
If you go read about axiology of theism, which is the value of theism has in society, anti-theism is generally held to be the position against the belief of God and or religion, right? And especially religion in society, because when you're dealing with the value of theism in society, you're talking about religiosity. You're talking about the religious aspect of that belief affecting society. So anti-theism does absolutely deal with not wanting religion. And so you can't just say that it's not the same as anti-religion. It is inclusive of anti-religion. For that very reason, because it's dealing with the axiology of it. But Randolph Richardson uses anti-theist to mean somebody who believes God doesn't exist, which is mind-bogglingly ridiculous. There are people that have used it that way, but it makes no sense. It's like people using the word atheism to say, look, without gods, therefore if without gods you're an atheist. Well, that's like saying automobile. If you're an automobile, auto means self, mobile means movable. So space shuttle must be an automobile because it moves by itself, right? Right? Space shuttle is an automobile because that's what the word means, right? That's the argument that they're using. The word means this, therefore it must be used this way. No, that is not how words work. That is an etymological fallacy. Right? And by the way, anti-theist.
I love letting Steve go on a rant, and then when he finishes, not saying anything.
and one more thing, anti-theist is the opposite of pro-theist. Pro-theist, you're pro-theism. You want religion. You want theism. So the opposite of that is anti-theism. Just like anti-hero doesn't mean you hate heroes. Anti-hero is a type of hero. It doesn't mean against heroes. This is how words work, people.
What if I said?
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Go ahead.
Well, what if you're a non-theist though, right?
I'm a non-theist, yeah.
So I think that's where people get confused. Some of the pre-suppers get confused, or they want to break it down into two categories, which is kind of the same mistake.
They get confused on that. Yeah, they think if you're a non-theist, that's synonymous with atheist, because that's what we've been told from these atheist groups. Anybody that knows philosophy knows that's bullshit.
I love the irony that the precepts may be making an error based on errors made by atheists. There's something about that tickles my funny bone a little bit.
Pretty meta.
Well, I keep telling people, Greg Bahnsen, his type of philosophy for presuppositionalism was to quote, shut the mouth of the unbeliever. It wasn't a dialectic. It wasn't to gather truth. It wasn't to have any kind of dialectic synthesis to get together and have, an antithesis and an argument and synthesis of it. It wasn't have anything to do with any of that. It was, hey, you're an unbeliever. I want to shut your mouth by confusing you. That was the whole point of presuppens. When they can't do that, they flip out.
It's popular with the Calvinist determinists or compatibilists, so it's not exclusive to them, but I noticed it's popular.
Calvinists love that shit. If you have to shout and rant and rave without being able to go back and forth, you need better arguments. If that's the only way your arguments fly.
Yeah. By the way,
you're supposed to be.
I'm sorry, Ozzy. I know two protheists. Jordan Peterson is a protheist, and Adam Friended is a protheist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Adam's.
I like Adam, and he claims to be an atheist, but he is a protheist. He doesn't ever affirm that he believes in any god or religion, but thinks that it's societally and psychological beneficial. So does Adam Friended. Mm-hmm. Adam Friended makes these kind of arguments. And by the way, I'm not saying that some of his arguments aren't bad. I mean, they're arguments to be addressed. But that's what a protheist is. Yes.
I'll take Adam Friended over Jordan Peterson any day, but that's not saying a lot. No offense, because I would actually, every time I've interacted with Adam Friended, it's been a fun time. So I don't mean it that way. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Do you remember way back when Adam Friended had a very awesome video that he made? He's a filmographer.
His artwork is actually.
And he made a brilliant video called the something detective. I don't know, something detective, but it was well acted, well scripted, well produced, long before I knew who Adam even was.
Was it better or worse than J.M. Truth's movie?
I'm still figuring out the 30 seconds difference of videos between
the 20 seconds video. 20 seconds.
Yeah, the 20 seconds of missing video, whatever.
Apparently he's back doing flat earth stuff again, so that lasted like a couple months.
All right, Jamie, I know you got back in because your phone dropped, but we've got to wrap this up. My throat is killing me now. We've gone for 4 hours. Wow, no problem. This was an episode from hell.
Call back in again sometime because talking with you is great, but also Rez and Mr. Serious and everybody else who called in, Jim, and we love you guys.
Right,
thanks for calling in.
Hey, love you guys.
Love you guys. Yep, thank you. And nobody wants to talk to us, right, Chesh? We're just so unpopular scapegoats and
apparently Darth Dawkins wants to talk to us real bad.
News to me. He knows where to find me. He's never been banned. I've never banned him from this channel because he's never been on my channel.
I'm willing to bet that peon is acting on their own, and they ought to know better, so Darth Dawkins can go and punish his little buddy.
Well, like he said, he's been trying to get me to have a conversation with Darth Dawkins on his server for ages. I'm like, you're out of your mind. You're just scared.
Why?
Oh, really? Okay. Again, a lot of these videos may not be around any longer, but we have people in the audience that remember. Yeah. I have had conversations with Darth Dawkins on other channels, like Nadia Yvette Chambers' channel. He used to come in all the time. He used to come in with Brett Keane. He used to come in with Von Helton. He used to come in with G-Man, used to come in with Veckel, used to come in with True Empiricism, used to come in with Tommy Hall. We've been there, done that. This is going back to like 2014, people. Okay, so Darth Dawkins is nothing new on the scene, I assure you.
They want you to take time out of your day to go hear what we just heard.
Yeah,
that's the thing is that like you have to, if you want somebody to like sit through just like the verbal abuse that was, because like that kind of hurt my ears. Well, and like sit through something like that, you have to make it like worthwhile to them. And so why would you ever do it in private in a Discord server? Why would you not do it publicly?
I want it all aired. Exactly. Why would I do that on Discord?
What benefit is that to you?
Unless I'm streaming it at the time, but it would have been a good conversation and fun.
On Discord, he's just gonna like, even after you get out, you could whoop his ass and he's gonna turn around and say that I totally won that.
Oh yeah, but you notice that CT, he was given the floor to answer my question and he decided to go a different route, which means that we were addressing the different route.
Right,
and then we're the dishonest ones.
And then he expected us to ignore the answer he decided to go with and just keep going, when we were like, no, you answered with this. We're gonna focus on that thing you answered with, because what he wants, or what he's used to, is you didn't answer my question, da 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 da. You didn't answer my question, da 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 da. What we're saying is, you did answer the question with this aside. So let's talk about this aside.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's talk about it. And maybe
Why
that was the goal. Talk about the
this
aside,
is interesting.
right? I
what's
don't
going on
know.
with this?
And most of the time I let asides go. I'm like, stay on point. But that was a good aside. I was like, oh, okay, let's go down that route. Right?
Why are we wasting our time talking to your little peons if he wants to come in here so bad? And if we're so afraid of him, then come on.
And then before you could get out a fully nuanced question, he wanted to break it off so he could go, answer the easy question so he could go back to a script because, he's the honest one and you're dishonest.
He knows it's not my first rodeo, so that's why I was kind of taken aback. I'm like, what? Come on, give me a little bit of credit, okay? I mean, I'm not Jack Angstrike for God's sake, but I mean, I've done this a couple times. Oh, anyways,
That's a fair concern, Jamie. That's a fair concern.
Oh, he's not.
My concern is Darth isn't prepared to give the gospel when there are openings for that. I don't know how you would even fit gospel into that script of just yelling noise.
He doesn't care about the gospel. Darth Dawkins, if I remember correctly, has said a few times, he doesn't really give a shit about any of it. He just does it to fuck with people. But he's not there to promote the gospel. He doesn't want you to convert. He couldn't care less.
Is it a bully like this guy? He just wants to bully people?
Yeah, I mean, what was his gain by doing what he did? Absolutely nothing. It made him look bad. Made the precepts look bad.
He's going to go and proclaim that it made us look bad and that we didn't. And people will come and look and.
But he wasn't muted. He wasn't booted. He left on his own accord.
He didn't like that we didn't do it in a. He did not like that we took his answer as he gave it and wanted to answer again without actually addressing the answer he did give.
Yeah.
Or wanted to pause his script.
Yep.
To have an aside when he started calling people dishonest.
He brought it up.
We gotta wrap up. Chester, you got anything coming up?
I have a store opening soon. So I'm excited for that. So if you want Goblin merch, you can get Goblin merch. I think I'm having a stream tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the Toddy Westbrook stuff because there's a new filing there. So I think we're going to be talking about that. And I think Karma is coming and Claire Bear is coming also. I'm not sure if anybody else will be there. Maybe, I'm not sure. Depends on the timing. But I will also be live on Thursday, but I can't remember what I'm talking about. So if you're looking for more me, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's going to be merch. I might talk, if I remember, I'll talk Steve into putting the link below when it's up and ready.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see here. All right, so what do I got? Oh yeah, on Wednesday I got reasons to believe we're doing science and errors in the Bible, which is interesting. And then I didn't go out of town this weekend, like I said, but I am definitely going out of town next weekend, so I will not be available Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Those 4 days I will have my tablet, but for the most part I'll be incommunicado.
So no caffeine corner next Monday.
No caffeine corner. That is a vacation day for us. We were taking it off.
I'm asleep in.
Because I'll be where I used to live. So, but let me see. We had a couple messages catch up on, and then we're gonna end this. Just Vic, where's grumpy old dude with his Darth impression when we need him?
Was that guy's impression not good enough?
Limo says he's heuristic. He just wants to break other people's argument. Yeah, that's all he cares about. They just want to debate and argue.
I mean, there could be a value to that. It takes all kinds, right? It's just a matter of nobody can hear you. I can't understand what you're saying because you're too busy screeching into the microphone. Stop. You're like I said, this dude 10. It's like bring it down to a 2.
And I don't get it. They'll get plenty of time to speak. I mean, take it away. Have at it. Say what you got to say, but they wouldn't even wait for you to finish something. But
yeah, no,
there's a reason why these people rarely creep out from under their fucking echo chamber. It's because they can't fucking handle the spotlight.
They need to get a better approach because it's not working for them because they've already been blocked. They've already been blocked in the atheist experience. But try back again next time.
Yeah, bring down your I know you're excited. It's okay. Bring it down to a 2, and then maybe we can try again when you've maybe hit some weed beforehand, and it'll be
the dude came in and I was like, this one goes to 11 right across the board.
Yeah, He says Steve's got to do his community service hours. Yeah, I've got it for my fraud, right?
He paused trying to tell us who he was. I don't think he wanted to tell us who he was because he thought we would kick him right away.
Anyways, just the tail on what you said. You're doing a stream on the Toddy Westbrook, Katie Joy Polson lawsuit. This for people who are aware, Salsi's last affidavit. I mentioned it, which is interesting. But they'll be going over that. So,
Godless Cover says, to be fair, we very much have 2 Caffeine corners this week. Yes, I think that's fair.
Yeah, we did. There we go. We're gonna end it with that. We did a double episode today, 4 hours.
Oh my God, you guys are so welcome, and this was totally planned.
Yes, we knew ahead of time. See, we're so good at this. We plan ahead.
That's why we're always muted at the beginning, because we're so good at this.
And you weren't. I don't know. Oh, whatever. All right. All right, Cheshire, get the last word and say what you got to say, and I'm ending.
Look out for my story and get yourself a little pocket gobbo. Bye. Triggly Puff's going on.